Chapter 3057. Annihilation did not reply, only increasing the intensity of his attacks. At this time, no matter what he said, the more wrong he would be. It was better not to say anything. Then let me analyze it, Ling Han said as he fought back. Right now, the only thing that could threaten him in this world was madness. Even the previous annihilation's true form could not suppress him. According to the timeline, you first gave Chong Yen and the others life seeds, and revealed some secrets to them, letting them know of the existence of the core of the world. According to the information you revealed, this should be able to help them advance 8 steps. Otherwise, Chong Yen and the others would not be so crazy. But what I got from madness is that it does not know of the existence of the core of the world. Although we are enemies, I am more willing to believe madness's words now. So you must be lying. The problem is, why did you lie to Chong Yen and the others? What benefits does it bring you? Ling Han stopped, looked at Annihilation and smiled. Are you willing to answer my doubts? You are very smart and even more daring, Annihilation said. I originally thought that this secret would not be revealed until Chong Yen and the others died. But I did not expect you to be so daring as to seek confirmation from madness. If I had known, I would not have deliberately revealed it to you. Although she had the appearance of an absolute beauty, now her black hair danced wildly, and there was even a terrifying power entwined in her hair. An energy storm formed, and a single strand of her hair could really kill 6 steps. She was extremely powerful. Annihilation, she shouted softly, and pushed out with her jade-like hands, sending out a force that turned into a mountain, pressing down on Ling Han. Ling Han punched out, and pung, the mountain immediately collapsed, but he also slid back slightly surprised. Annihilation had used some kind of secret technique to condense the scattered force into one. Thus, the power of the attack had increased by many times. Fortunately, Ling Han was surrounded by layers of energy, and this only eliminated 14 layers. Compared to madness, the difference was obvious. Ling Han continued. Since you have already taken over this body, but deliberately left a part of your consciousness in the core of the previous Yuan world, what is your goal? Did you deliberately say those few words to me? Or do you want to use the power there to do something to me? Back then the power there was very strange. It could ignore his defense. Perhaps only the origin world could do this. This was also the reason why extinction had to split a part of his consciousness there. Hidden fragrance plunder vanity. Now that I think about it, you should be trying to do something to me, and your target should be the speck of light in my sea of wisdom. Am I right? Ling Han looked at extinction. Annihilation attacked several times before saying coldly, not bad. You are very good at guessing. Ling Han shook his head. I wouldn't have guessed. You exposed it yourself. If Miaju did not kidnap the person he was looking for, Ling Han would not have thought of this. This was a completely unrelated matter. How could he have made the connection? Of course, on the other hand, Ling Han had unlocked the secret of having a life imprint in his body. You've done so much for the sake of advancing to the 8th step, right? Ling Han asked again. Annihilation did not speak. He only sneered and attacked again and again. You even lied to me about joining forces with you. Do you think I'm a fool? Ling Han asked again. He frowned slightly. At that time, besides peeking at the secret of the mass of light in his sea of wisdom, did Annihilation leave behind any other tricks? This kind of trick could suddenly make him lose his combat power or control him. But Ling Han immediately shook his head. The power of existential plane in his body surged. This power surpassed any kind of intrinsic power, but he did not find anything strange at all. It should be impossible for Annihilation, whose strength was similar to his, to be able to set up some tricks in his body without him noticing. Since you've guessed my identity, I can't let you live. Annihilation let out a long howl. His black hair danced wildly, turning into arrows that shot towards Ling Han. Bang, bang, bang. These strands of hair hit Ling Han's body, causing the defensive layer to explode. Light flashed wildly, and the defensive layer was quickly broken down layer by layer. But with just a thought from Ling Han, a new defensive layer immediately formed. As long as this power did not reach the level of crushing Ling Han, then it would definitely not be able to break through Ling Han's defense. Ling Han shook his head. I didn't guess your identity. I just removed the first layer of your disguise. His eyes burned as he stared at Annihilation. Who are you? Don't tell me you're some world consciousness. You can fool a ghost. The other deliberately pretended to be angry out of humiliation, in order to cover up and prevent Ling Han from thinking further. I'm the director of the television station. Annihilation sneered. She was clearly in a fierce battle, but she was still indescribably beautiful and pleasing to the eye. She did not reply and only attacked fiercely. Although she believed that Ling Han would never be able to guess her identity, talking to Ling Han would not benefit her at all. Naturally, there was no need to reply. If you don't want to talk, then I'll beat you up and make you spill all your secrets. Ling Han roared and waved his fists. All the fifth-rate runes were activated, and his strength increased by 4,000 times. This was too terrifying. Even someone as strong as Annihilation could only parry. As long as she received a punch, she would be sent flying. She was no match for him at all. In this present world, only frenzy could contend with Ling Han in strength. Ling Han chased after her and punched Annihilation in the face. He did not care what kind of peerless beauty she was. As long as she was an enemy, gender did not matter. Bang, bang, bang. Ling Han punched again and again. He wanted to suppress her and force her to spill her secrets. Wishful thinking, Annihilation said coldly. Her figure moved, and her black dress fluttered as she started to break out of the encirclement. Ling Han naturally would not let her go, and his attacks became even more ferocious. He went all out, and his strength could be said to be incomparably violent. With one blow, a few pieces of clothing were sent flying. Annihilation looked at her arm. A piece had been torn there, revealing her snow-white jade arm. Her pretty face was instantly filled with embarrassment. Previously, she had been able to protect her clothes with ease, but now that Ling Han's explosive power was too terrifying, she could not take care of it. Ling Han was also slightly taken aback, but he immediately recovered his fighting spirit. Enemies did not matter if they were men or women. He had no evil thoughts in his heart, so what did he need to worry about? Kill. He attacked again. Bang, bang, bang. Under his furious attacks, Annihilation looked even more wretched. But 7 steps was 7 steps after all. How could she not have some tricks up her sleeve? When that black dress was about to be torn to shreds, layers of black mist appeared over her body, wrapping her up. It seemed to turn into clothing but also like a shield. Ling Han was shocked, because he immediately realized that this black mist was not so simple. It had a powerful repellent effect, and all his attacks would be swept to the sides, making it difficult for her to touch his strength. Chapter 30:58. For 7 steps, there was no difference in the strength of the attack she received. In any case, her physique wasn't bad, so it didn't matter. But now that Extinction was breaking out of the encirclement, the situation was different. Originally, Ling Han could suppress her with a single strike, but now that the attack landed on her body, the power was dispersed, and the power she received was pitifully small. Naturally, it couldn't stop her anymore, and she forcibly broke out. Interesting, Ling Han thought. He set up 100 layers of energy shields on himself, each layer dissipating the attack he received. Even someone as strong as Frenzy couldn't hurt him with a single strike. Right now, Extinction was using another method, which was to weaken the power of the attack it received. This was also an excellent defensive method. It could be used as a reference. Ling Han said in his mind. He would never be arrogant and conceited, nor would he be complacent. When this battle was over, he definitely had to study Extinction's defensive method. It was really worth learning. However, Extinction was almost powerless now, so she naturally couldn't be stopped. She repeatedly broke out of the encirclement. Ling Han could only leave the void first, sending away the person with the ball of light in his mind. This was Extinction's target. And if he was sent away, Extinction's trip would be considered a complete failure. She was also tricked out of some information by Ling Han. Though her true identity wasn't exposed, the first layer of her disguise was exposed. Ling Han! Extinction called out harshly. She didn't have Ling Han's ability to travel between planes. Once this person left the plane, she couldn't track him anymore, and completely lost the other senses. Ling Han picked his ear, and indifferently said, "No need to be so loud, I'm not deaf." Extinction looked at him darkly and shouted, "Hand over the person." He don't forget. You stole my person first, and now you want me to hand my own person over to you. Who the hell are you? Ling Han scoffed. Was it just because you were beautiful? The Empress and Hunyo weren't inferior to her in the slightest, so how could Ling Han be affected by her? Have you ever thought about the consequences of going against me? Miju asked. You can rival me, but what about your family? I remember you have several wives and children. She was a loner, so she could do whatever she wanted without any scruples. Ling Han frowned, and his eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. I can catch ghosts. Who am I afraid of? Originally, he had only wanted to suppress annihilation. After all, she was no longer the great devil of the past, and he did not know who had taken over her body. But now, the other party actually used his family to threaten him. This made Ling Han want to kill them. When I take 7 steps, you'll be the first one I kill, he said word by word. Annihilation couldn't help but be overwhelmed by his aura. After being stunned for a moment, he laughed out loud. I'm immortal. Even the impact of the origin world's collapse can't kill me. What makes you think you can do that? I'll give you 3 days to consider. 3 days from now, if the person I want appears here, then I will act as if nothing has happened. Otherwise, don't blame me for starting a massacre. She turned around, tore open a spatial rift and left. Ling Han did not chase after her. Even frenzy could not kill 7 steps, so it was naturally impossible for him to do so. Moreover, annihilation was far stronger than Chong Yen and the others. He could not even suppress her. This time, it could be said that both sides had suffered some losses. Ling Han had not been able to get her back, and annihilation had not been able to snatch her away. I have to hurry. Ling Han continued to the next plane, and continued to travel. He wanted to find more people who had a ball of light in their sea of consciousness, so that he could completely decipher their life code. However, there were far too few people like this. After a round of searching, Ling Han had gained nothing. After returning to the Xuanma Plain, Ling Han took a break, and spent some time with his family. The threat of annihilation was very real. She was only one person, and she was immortal. She could do whatever she wanted without any scruples. Thus Ling Han began to move. He sent his entire family to a lower plane to temporarily settle down. Unfortunately, the family could not produce a second person with a battle prowess at 7 steps. Otherwise, they could share a lot of the burden for Ling Han. Ling Shi and Fu Tianxing were still stuck at 4 steps. It was too difficult to cross from 4 steps to 5 steps. Even Ling Han had relied on a fragment of the plane core to cross over. Now the only super high-level plane in the world was the Xuanma Plane. How could he shatter it and give it to them? Ning Haixin's fierce impulse could not be repeated. She was now at 2 steps. She was far from 7 steps. Ling Han did not stop studying the ball of light in his sea of consciousness. He had only deciphered the life code within it. In fact, there was more information, and there should be more secrets hidden within. Ghost fate and immortal path. Perhaps this was why he was so awesome in alchemy. And because of this, Ning Haixin had a strong affinity with him. Since he could not find a new life code, he naturally could not waste time. After all, there might be a huge treasure inside. Ling Han immersed himself in this kind of research day and night. Of course, he did not neglect his cultivation. But at the celestial venerable level, it was almost impossible to make rapid progress in cultivation. Were there any great medicines or things like the plain core now? He could only do it step by step. Ling Han had already reached the last step. Thus, it was extremely difficult to reach the peak of 6 steps. And from the peak of 6 steps to 7 steps, that was even more difficult. Tens of thousands of years passed, but Ling Han had gained nothing. He thought about it and gathered Ning Haixin, Batai, Ma Chunggao, and the others together. Since the resonance of 2 people could break the secret of the ball of light, then what kind of miracle would happen if more people resonated? There were a total of 8 people. They intertwined their divine senses and lit up the ball of light in their minds. Boom! Ling Han felt his body shake, and he instantly felt a sharp pain. Ah! Ning Haixin and the others held their heads, revealing expressions of pain. Ning Haixin was fine, but Ba Tai, Ma Chengao, and the others all bled from their orifices and almost died. This impact was too fierce. It directly attacked their minds, as if it was going to shatter them. Ling Han was also shocked. Then he thought about it, and couldn't help but reveal a happy expression. When the 8 people's balls of light resonated, he seemed to see a miniature version of the origin world. On one of the planes, there were 8 spots of light shining, and on a plane 17 levels away, there was a weak spot of light also shining. Was this the 9th person, who had a ball of light in their minds? Ling Han immediately set out, and came to this medium plane. He narrowed down the range according to his memory, and then enlisted many Celestial King tier forces to search. Naturally, he relied on the testing device that he and Wally had created together. But even if he narrowed down the range, this was still a very, very large area, and it covered billions of living beings. How small was the probability of finding a specific person here, who might not even be a person? Ling Han did not lack patience. As he waited, he cultivated. In any case, it would not delay him. Chapter 3059. The Wang Clan of Thousand Water Town. This was a very powerful clan in the area, with a severing mundane ancestor in charge. Only the Li clan could rival the Wang clan. The 2 clans competed with each other, and would join forces to eliminate forces that could threaten them. In these hundreds of millions of years, though the 2 clans had some conflicts, they lived together in harmony. However, on this night, the Wang clan flowed with blood. Young Master, the ancestor patriarch, and the others all died in battle. You are the only hope of the clan. Please leave quickly. An old servant said to a youth on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The youth looked only 15 or 16 years old. He was very stubborn, his eyes flashing, and he said, "There are no cowards in the Wang clan that would flee without a fight. I would rather die, and be buried with great-grandfather, father, and the others." "Young master, you can't," the old servant urged, but the youth was determined, and was not moved at all. "Young master, I have offended you." The old servant moved. Pa! A palm strike landed on the youth's neck, and he fainted. The old servant dug a hole, and buried the youth inside. He had just sprinkled leaves on it when he listened, and then his expression changed drastically. "Young master, you are the last of the Wang clan, please live on." The old servant knelt and kowtowed a few times, and suddenly released a long howl. His figure spread out, and he quickly left. Shio, shio, shio! Immediately 5 figures pounced, chasing after the old servant. "Old man, you can't escape. Quickly hand over the remnants of the Wang clan, and maybe we can spare your life." 6 people, 1 fleeing and 5 chasing, soon disappeared without a trace. After 3 days, the ground broke open, and the youth suddenly dashed out. His name was Wang Chuanha, and he was the only son of the Wang clan patriarch of Thousand Water Town. His eyes were red, as if they could spit fire. "Uncle Chi must have drawn the pursuers away for my safety," Wang Chuanha said to himself. "The pursuers are so powerful, and Uncle Chi is definitely dead now. I can't go and die again." The youth calmed down. "I am the only one left in the Wang clan. If I go and die again, then the great hatred of the Wang clan will never be avenged." "Li Jingchu, you are really, really ruthless." Wang Chuanha gritted his teeth. The reason why the Wang clan was annihilated was because of the Li clan. But hadn't the Wang family and the Li family always been evenly matched, and neither could do anything to the other? This matter began 3 years ago, when Wang Chuanha met the granddaughter of the Li family's second elder, Li Jingchu. As a young man, he fell in love with her at first sight. He did not expect that the other party would also have a good impression of him. After a while, the 2 of them quietly walked together. In the end, the young man mustered up the courage to confess to his family, but he was reprimanded. Although the Wang clan and Li clan couldn't be considered enemies, they had always been competing with each other, and there was no lack of dirty dealings between them. How could they possibly unite by marriage? Furthermore, the future head of the clan was such an important figure. But Wang Chuanha steeled his heart. Coincidentally, the Li clan also sent someone over. They said that it would be better to fulfill this marriage. From then on, Wang Chuanhe and the Li clan would become one family, helping and supporting each other. In the end, the Wang family could only compromise and agree to this marriage. But on the day of the wedding, all the important figures of the Wang clan were poisoned, and the Li clan who came to attend the wedding also bared their fangs. They went on a killing spree, killing all the important figures of the Wang clan in one night. Wang Chuanhe was rescued by the family's loyal servants, but after being hunted down, only the last old servant was left, and now he had probably met with misfortune. And what Wang Chuanhe could not accept, and felt the most pained was, that the person who poisoned the important figures of the family, was actually Li Jingchu's doing. When she offered tea to everyone in the Wang clan during the wedding ceremony, the poison was in this tea. Who would have thought that his new wife would be so ruthless? This kind of betrayal naturally made Wang Chuanhe feel incomparably pained. He blamed himself, thinking that it was his fault that led to the destruction of the Wang clan. That was why he wanted to fight the Li clan to the death in his agitation. But after calming down, he knew that this was just courting death. It would only make his parents and relatives die more unjustly. I want revenge. But the first step is to leave this place. Only by staying alive will there be hope. He left Thousand Water Town, and did not have any direction. He only walked forwards. 3 years later, he arrived at a large city. On his way here, he encountered innumerable dangers. There were ferocious wild beasts, as well as mountain bandits that had killed countless people. But his luck was incredibly good. He could always find a sliver of hope when he was at the end of the line. His clothes were tattered, and he had long since lost the bearing of the young master of the Wang clan. He looked like a beggar. After entering into the city, Wang Chuanhe walked around in a daze. He wanted revenge, but how could it be easy? Without the support of the Wang clan, he was only a mere heavenly body tier. How could he advance into the severing mundane tier? It was far, far away. As he walked, he stopped, his heart filled with dispiritedness. He sat down on his butt, and was in a daze. There was a great elite in this city that had created a sun and a moon. Very soon the sun set, and the bright moon rose, sprinkling down gentle moonlight. No, I can't continue to be dispirited like this. If I lose my fighting spirit, who can avenge my Wang clan? Wang Chuanhe recovered a sliver of fighting spirit. He got up, and was just about to find a place to rest, when he suddenly saw a notice pasted on the wall opposite him. It said that as long as he went to King Xian's manor in the city to undergo some kind of test, and if he passed, he would obtain a promise from King Ma Xianwang. He could raise any request, even if it was to marry King Ma Xuanwang's daughter. Who was King Ma Xianwang? A celestial king? Wang Chuanhe was startled, and couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. If he could pass this test, then would he be able to ask King Ma Xianwang to make a move and annihilate the Li clan? He naturally knew that for a celestial king to make such a promise, there were probably only a handful of people in this world that could pass this test. His chances were infinitely close to zero, but he still had to try. What if? He headed towards King Xian's manor in the city, and saw that there was a queue at the entrance. There were also people continuously walking out from inside, shaking their heads and sighing. Sigh. Is there really someone who can pass that test? It doesn't test one's talent in martial art, and it doesn't test one's ability in martial art. How exactly can one pass? How strange. The people who came out were still complaining, but it didn't affect the enthusiasm of the people queuing outside. If this test was passed, the rewards would be too great. What kind of test is it? Someone in the queue asked. Put something on your head, and you don't have to do anything. After about 10 breaths, it will tell you that you didn't pass and you can leave, the person who came out said. Hearing this, Wang Chuanhe felt a sense of hope, but he also felt that it was extremely uncertain. His talent in martial art wasn't bad, but it wasn't top-notch either. At least, there were a lot of people who were better than him. Therefore, if it was a test of martial art talent, it was impossible for him to pass. Therefore, he had a little more confidence in himself. But since so many people couldn't pass, he naturally didn't have any confidence. TSK, what a joke. Even beggars are here to try their luck. Chapter 3061. Are you trying to go back on your word? Wang Chuanha said in his heart. You are already a celestial king. Who else can be called a big shot? You are clearly going back on your word. But how could he dare to vent his anger on a celestial king? There was no need for the opponent to do anything. Any random cat or dog from the residence could kill him. He was young after all. And when he thought like this, his expression naturally showed on his face. Ma Xianwang smiled faintly. He naturally knew what Wang Chuanha was thinking. And the truth was, he was also very surprised. A powerful Empyrean had gone through so much trouble just to find a person who couldn't be any more ordinary. He could not see what was so special about Wang Chuanha, that a celestial lord would pay so much attention to him. If not for his relationship with Ling Han, he would have killed Wang Chuanha long ago, if he dared to have such emotions. But now, he could only think about it. He knew how important this matter was to Ling Han. He was just about to speak, but he was startled because he had already received a voice transmission from Ling Han. He hurriedly stood up and respectfully said, Greetings, Lord. Wang Chuanha was shocked. There really was an existence even more awesome than Ma Xianwang. He felt his vision blur. And there was already one more person in the courtyard. He was very young, and his face was like jade. His hair was black, and it was not tied up with a crown. It was slightly fluttering, and there was an indescribable elegance to it. Greetings, Lord. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and knelt down towards Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a finger, and lightly pressed on Wang Chuanha's forehead. He immediately discovered the existence of a dot of light in Wang Chuanha's sea of consciousness. This was the person he was looking for. Wait, Ling Han was suddenly startled. He discovered even more things. Bloodline resonance. This was actually his descendant. How could this be? This was just a mid-level plane. How could his descendant appear here? No, it was indeed possible. When the 5 great supremes had revolted, Ling Shi, Ling Jianshui, and the others had all been captured, and the descendants of the Ling family had scattered in all directions. Although most of them had fled to various corners of the Xuanma plain, it was possible that one of them had escaped to this place. It was very difficult to cross 17 plains, but after so much time had passed, it was not impossible. The Ling family had been prosperous for a time, and there were always some supreme treasures passed down that could allow them to travel through plains. After arriving here, the descendants of the Ling family had settled down, but it was possible that this branch of the Ling family's bloodline had suffered a heavy blow when they had passed through the mortal plane. As a result, their elites had all died out, and the descendants could only appear in the severing mundane tier. Not long ago, they had even suffered a calamity of annihilation. Ling Han was instantly enraged, but after thinking about it, he decided to let Wang Chuanha deal with it himself. You've worked hard, he said to Ma Xianwang. It's my duty, my duty. Ma Xianwang didn't dare to take credit for himself, and said modestly. In fact, as long as he had a relationship with Ling Han, it would be equivalent to him obtaining a talisman to escape death. Which immortal king, or even sky sovereign, would dare to make a move against him? This favor was greater than the heavens. Ling Han nodded and said, You may go about your business first. Yes, my lord. Ma Xianwang hurriedly left obediently, though he was very curious as to why Ling Han was looking for such an ordinary person, and what secrets did he have. Curiosity killed the cat. How much ability did he have? And he dared to interfere with the matters of sky sovereigns. After Ma Xianwang left, Ling Han looked towards Wang Chuanha and asked, What wish do you have? Here it comes. Wang Chuanha instantly became excited and said, My lord, I have a great enmity, and would like to ask my lord to act and destroy my enemy. There's no need to call me my lord. My name is Ling Han. You can call me senior. Ling Han thought for a moment, and decided not to reveal the relationship between them for the time being. Yes, senior, Wang Chuanha hurriedly said. Ling Han glanced at him and said, I won't act. Wang Chuanha instantly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His excited expression froze, and his expression was filled with disappointment. He looked towards Ling Han, his lips trembling slightly. Why? He wanted to ask, but he couldn't make a sound. Don't you want to ask that woman yourself why she betrayed you? Ling Han asked with a smile. Wang Chuanha was shocked and said, "My lord, how did you know?" After Ling Han pointed out with his finger just now, he had already flipped through all of Wang Chuanha's memories, and naturally knew what the other party had encountered. "I won't act, but I can teach you martial arts, and let you take revenge with your own hands," Ling Han said. Wang Chuanha was stunned for a moment, and then he hurriedly knelt down. Disciple Wang Chuanha greets master. Before he could say the word father, he had already been lifted up by Ling Han. "I won't accept any more disciples." Ling Han shook his head. What a joke. This was his descendant. If he accepted him as a disciple, then wouldn't the seniority be messed up? "I need something from you, and in return, I will give you enough strength to take revenge. How about it?" Wang Chuanha revealed a look of disappointment. An existence that could make an immortal king address as my lord. How awesome was that? Unfortunately, the other party was unwilling to accept him as a disciple. But as long as he could take revenge, that was enough. "Deal." He nodded. "After you take revenge for your family, I will take you away from here," Ling Han said. These people who had light orbs in their consciousness, apart from hiding their life codes, also had their own special abilities. If they could be deciphered, it would be very useful. Moreover, this was his descendant. He taught Wang Chuanha how to explore divine sense. And then the two of them resonated, allowing Wang Chuanha to discover that there was another light orb in his body, and he obtained the information within it. Wang Chuanha gave this information back to Ling Han, and Ling Han taught him how to cultivate. What was Ling Han's cultivation level, and how many heavenly and earthly treasures did he have? With endless resources, even a stupid pig could become an immortal king. After only 7 days, Wang Chuanha reached the dividing soul tier. Ling Han did not intend to build a stable foundation for Wang Chuanha. The other party did not have outstanding talent in martial art, but his luck was especially good. For example, if he was given a choice of 2, 3, or even 10,000, he would always be able to find the right one. If he was given the chance to go to an ancient site and risk his life, it would probably be as easy as walking on flat ground. His special ability was his super good luck. For revenge, the dividing soul tier would definitely be enough. "Go." Ling Han waved his hand. He wanted to properly digest the life codes he had just obtained. Wang Chuanha respectfully kowtowed to Ling Han. 7 days ago, he would never have thought that he would undergo such an earth-shattering change in just a short 7 days. He was filled with gratitude towards Ling Han, although he also knew that the things Ling Han had obtained from his sea of consciousness were definitely extraordinary. To be able to help him take revenge for his blood feud, this was a great kindness. He left King Xian's manor, preparing to leave the city, and returned to Thousand Water Town. But just as he reached the city gate, he was stopped. "Stop," a guard said loudly. "You can't leave." End of this chapter. Chapter 3062. If I tell you to stay, then stay. Why do you ask so many questions? The guard said impatiently. Wang Chuanha thought for a moment, and then realized. Is it Lei Dong? He had only offended Lei Dong here, so there was no need for others to bother with a little beggar like him. He had only offended Lei Dong here, so there was no need for others to bother with a little beggar like him. Since you know you've offended young Master Lei, you still want to leave? The guard said, not even looking at Wang Chuanha directly. Fine, I'll wait for him, Wang Chuanha said. Since Lei Dong was looking for a beating, then it was all his fault. Although the Lei clan had an elite beyond the dividing soul tier, didn't he still have Ling Han behind him? To say nothing of others, just Ma Xianwang alone was enough to make the Lei clan not dare to fart. Not long after, Lei Dong ran over. Little beggar, you're really good at hiding. Lei Dong was slightly surprised. 7 days ago, he had been waiting at the entrance of King Xian's estate, but he didn't see Wang Chuanha appear no matter how long he waited. This made him feel strange, and he couldn't figure it out. However, he naturally wouldn't believe that Wang Chuanha was the person that King Xian's estate was looking for. As expected, he had many spies in the city, and soon found this little beggar. I said you'll regret it. Lei Dong attacked brazenly, striking out with a palm, wanting to kill Wang Chuanha. Killing intent flashed through Wang Chuanha's eyes, and he also struck out with a palm. Pung! Lei Dong instantly turned into a rain of blood. Against a dividing soul tier cultivator, a severing mundane tier cultivator would naturally die in a single move. Although 7 days had passed in the outside world, under the acceleration of time, Wang Chuanha had gone through almost 10 years of hard cultivation. As his strength increased, his mentality also changed. Killing decisively, this was the mentality that he had cultivated with Ling Han. Wang Chuanha didn't even look at him, and only said to the guard, "Are you still going to stop me?" The guard trembled, and hurriedly shook his head. He didn't want to die. That's good. Wang Chuanha turned, and walked out of the city. The guard was still scared, and after being dazed for a while, he finally knew to run to the Lei clan to report the news. An outstanding clansman of the Lei clan had died, and he was a witness. If he didn't report it, he would definitely be skinned alive by the Lei clan. When the news spread, the Lei family was naturally enraged. Lei Qianxing, Lei Dong's father, was the first to rush out. He wanted to capture Wang Chuanha and kill him in front of his son's coffin. He was an ascending origin tier cultivator, so his speed was incredibly fast. With a single shift of his body, he had already arrived at the city gates. Looking at the bloodstains on the ground, he couldn't help but have a sorrowful expression as tears streamed down his face. He only had one son. "You dare kill my son? Not only will I tear you to shreds, I'll also find all 9 generations of your family and kill them all," Lei Qianxing viciously said. "Ai!" A sigh suddenly sounded out. "Who is it?" Lei Qianxing was startled. He actually hadn't discovered that there was another person nearby. It should be known that with his might as an ascending origin tier elite, ordinary people would have long since fled in fear. How could there possibly be someone so close to him? Ling Han walked out slowly. "Let the juniors settle their own matters. Why are you interfering?" He was Wang Chuanha's ancestor, so how could he watch as Lei Qianxing hunted down a descendant? Lei Qianxing sized him up, and couldn't help but frown slightly. He couldn't see through Ling Han's cultivation, but he was certain that he definitely wasn't a celestial king. Celestial kings were shrouded in brilliant colors, and this was the most obvious characteristic. Since he wasn't a celestial king, he was at most an ascending origin tier like himself. What was there to fear? "From your tone, you seem to be the senior of the murderer who killed my son," he asked. Ling Han nodded. "That's right. Fine, then I'll kill you first." Lei Qianxing's eyes turned cold, killing intent surging. "Stop." He was just about to move when he suddenly heard a shout, causing him to forcibly stop. An expression of shock appeared on his face, and he blurted out, "Lord Celestial King." There was only one Lord Celestial King here, and that was Ma Xianwang. The Lei clan was an ascending origin tier force, and was already very powerful. But in front of a Celestial King force, it was completely trash. If Ma Xianwang really wanted to move against the Lei clan, he could easily destroy the Lei clan. Thus, Lei Qianxing immediately became incredibly respectful, and clasped his hands in greeting to Ma Xianwang. "Greetings, Lord Ma." But the next scene caused Lei Qianxing's face to turn green. He saw Ma Xianwang jog over, and kneel down to Ling Han. This lowly one was not strict enough, and actually offended Lord. "Please forgive me, Lord." "Fuck." Lei Qianxing's expression was filled with disbelief. That was a celestial king, the strongest in the world, but he actually knelt down and addressed Ma Xianwang as if he was incredibly lowly. If he had heard of this, he would definitely laugh loudly, denounce it as ridiculous, and take it as a complete joke. But when this scene happened before his eyes, Lei Qianxing only felt a bone-chilling coldness. Even a celestial king had to kneel down to greet him. So who was this incredibly young man? His legs involuntarily weakened, and he directly knelt down. He wanted to call him Lord, but no words came out. It was too frightening. Ling Han only smiled faintly. "Lord, please don't interfere in the matters of the younger generation. All right? All right. Lei Qianxing finally gathered a bit of courage. From Ling Han's words, it seemed like he didn't want to make things difficult for him and the Lei family anymore. This naturally made him feel relieved, and his back was drenched in cold sweat, drenching his clothes. Ling Han nodded, and turned to leave. Only when Ling Han's figure disappeared did Lei Qianxing's entire body go limp, and he fell on his butt. Pa! He was immediately slapped across the face. Ma Xianwang was glaring at him fiercely, as if he wanted to swallow him whole. Lord! Lei Qianxing's heart jumped. You bastard, this seat was almost killed because of you. Ma Xianwang flew into a rage, and gave him a round of beating. Lei Qianxing could only cry out in pain, not even daring to defend himself. Thankfully, Ma Xianwang saw that Ling Han had spared him, and did not dare to beat Lei Qianxing to death. If one day, Ling Han had a sudden impulse, and said that he wanted to personally deal with Lei Qianxing, then wouldn't he be in deep trouble? Scram! In the end, Ma Xianwang sent Lei Qianxing flying with a kick. Out of sight, out of mind. Lei Qianxing could be said to have escaped death twice. Dragging his heavily injured body back to the Lei family, he was still thinking how lucky he was to be targeted by an Celestial King, someone many times stronger than an Celestial King, and still not die. This was truly not an easy feat. Thinking of this, he actually felt a little proud. Seventh Elder, what happened to you? Seeing Lei Qianxing return drenched in blood, the Lei family members were all shocked. It's nothing, nothing. Lei Qianxing hurriedly waved his hands. He naturally couldn't bring up his own scandal, and could only think of an excuse to change the subject. End of chapter. Chapter 3063. Ling Han naturally wouldn't take such a small matter to heart. He also left the city, and followed behind Wang Chuanha. It wasn't that he couldn't protect this descendant in the city, but he wanted to go to Thousand Water Town to take a look. He arrived at the old site of the Wang clan. It had already been 3 years since that tragedy, so this place naturally didn't have the rivers of blood from back then. It had already recovered its bustling presence. However, it wasn't the Wang clan that occupied this place today, but the Li clan. Ling Han released his divine sense and swept it over, and couldn't help but show a strange expression. Today was really a coincidence. It was the auspicious day of Li Jingchu's wedding, and her husband's clan had a very powerful background. It was a disciple of a large sect called Luo Guang. Was this Wang Chuanha's luck attribute? The Li clan couldn't have married off a daughter a day earlier or a day later, but it just had to be today. Ling Han didn't make a move. He only traced the origins of the Wang clan, wanting to know what exactly his descendant had experienced. Just at this moment, Wang Chuanha hurried over. When he left, Wang Chuanha used a whole 3 years, but now he only used half a day's time to return. There was no other reason. From the heavenly body tier to the dividing soul tier, his strength had increased many times over. To say nothing else, only severing mundane tiers could fly here, and this alone saved him a lot of time. He was filled with emotion, and felt even more grateful towards Ling Han. Without Ling Han, there wouldn't be the current him, and there wouldn't be any need to talk about revenge. He would definitely be gasping for breath in some corner, worrying about being hunted down by the Li clan, right? 3 years had passed, and whether it was his strength or appearance, he had changed greatly. Previously, he was still a slightly inexperienced youth, and now he had become a tall and slender young man. His appearance had also become slightly more mature. Walking on this familiar street, no one actually recognized that he was a remnant of the Wang clan, causing Wang Chuanha to feel a misconception. Had he come to the wrong place? First, he returned home to take a look. He arrived at the old site of the Wang clan, and saw that joyous scene. Who was getting married? He randomly grabbed a person to ask, and his gaze immediately became fierce. Li Jingchu, a name that he had deliberately suppressed at the bottom of his heart, yet would occasionally pop up and bite at his soul. This important accomplice that had caused the destruction of his family, and the death of all his relatives, was actually getting married now? On what grounds? Wang Chuanha's expression immediately became gloomy. Fortunately, he had arrived in time. If it had been delayed until tomorrow, Li Jingchu would have left with her husband after the wedding to go to some big sect, and become a disciple of that big sect. He raised his head to look at the plaque on the door, then strode forward. Everything would be settled today. Sir, your invitation. Someone stopped him. Wang Chuanha grinned. What? You don't even recognize me? That person stared at Wang Chuanha. He felt that this person seemed somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. My surname is Wang, Wang Chuanha said again. Wang! That person's heart immediately jumped. In Thousand Water Town, the surname Wang was taboo. Ah, you're Wang Chuanha. He finally remembered, mainly because he never thought that the Wang family, the only fish that escaped the net, would actually dare to appear. What? Wang Chuanha, the only descendant of the Wang clan. There were quite a few people in the surroundings who couldn't help but be shocked when they heard this. That youth from the Wang clan had actually returned, but it had only been 3 years. How much could Wang Chuanha's strength have changed? Isn't he just throwing his life away by coming back? It's definitely because of Li Jingqiu. That's right. Back then, the Wang clan was destroyed because of Wang Chuanha and Li Jingqiu's grand wedding. Who would have thought that after 3 years, Li Jingqiu would be getting married again? When Wang Chuanha heard the news, he naturally couldn't bear it. Anyone would be able to bear it. The woman he married in the past brought disaster to his entire clan. And now she's marrying another man in the same place. How could he bear it? She'll lower your voice. Do you want to die? Everyone whispered to each other. This was a wedding banquet, so there was no lack of people from Thousand Water Town. They naturally knew about this matter that had happened 3 years ago. Furthermore, the destruction of the Wang clan was an incomparably sensational event for a small place like Thousand Water Town. Even if it had been 1,000 years, it would still be mentioned. Wang Chuanha strode forward, charging straight into the main hall. Stop! The Li clan's guards at the door all tried to stop him, but Wang Chuanha only lightly shook them. Bang, 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 the guards were sent flying. How could they possibly stop him? Seeing this scene, the guests were all shocked. Could it be that in these 3 years, Wang Chuanha had encountered a great opportunity? They remembered that he was only in the heavenly body tier back then, and definitely didn't have such battle prowess. Wang Chuanha strode forward, and behind him were the groaning and injured people who had fallen to the ground. The scene was very lively. He was naturally very familiar with this place, and soon arrived at the main hall. Coincidentally, the bride had just been invited out, and was about to complete 3 kowtows and 9 bows with the groom. Next, she would be sent to the bridal chamber. Stop! The Li clan obviously had more than just a few guards. More people had caught up, making a clamor. This caused the patriarch of the Li clan to involuntarily look displeased, and he looked towards the elders at the side. What day was today? The big day that Li Jingqiu was betrothed to the 7th grandson of the 3rd elder of the Red Flame sect. Luo Guang? What kind of force was the Red Flame sect? A celestial king? Jingqiu was really a lucky star. 2 years ago, she had met Luo Guang by chance, causing Luo Guang to fall in love with her at first sight. To the Luo clan, they were unwilling for Luo Guang to marry such a mediocre wife. But who asked Luo Guang to like her? After coaxing and pestering for 2 years, the Luo clan finally nodded. However, the wedding would only be held in Thousand Water Town. After returning to the Red Flame sect, the Luo clan wouldn't hold another wedding, because they couldn't afford to lose face. Marrying such an ordinary woman, and having a wedding? What a joke. However, to the Li clan, being able to ally with the Luo clan was already a blessing in disguise, because the Luo clan had an ascending origin tier ancestor, and the sect master of the Red Flame sect was a celestial king. An elder of the Li clan immediately stood up, and shouted towards the outside. What's all the noise about? In reply to 4th elder, the remnants of the Wang clan have come, a guard said, panting. What? The elders of the Li clan were all stunned, and Li Jingqiu, who was wearing a red veil, also trembled slightly, which was immediately detected by the groom at the side. Jingqiu, leave everything to me, Luo Guang said, his eyes filled with confidence and disdain. However, he was a mere severing mundane clan, so he naturally would make a fuss over a small matter. Though he was only in the severing mundane tier, he had countless rare treasures on him, and could slaughter a force like the Li clan all by himself. Li Jingqiu nodded, and then said, Thank you, Luo Guang. I am your husband, and your matters are my matters, Luo Guang said very gently. Li Jingqiu slowly leaned over, and said, I just knew that you are good to me. Li clan, I'm here. Wang Chuanha had already walked into the main hall, his eyes fixed on the newlyweds dressed in bright red wedding robes. End of this chapter. Chapter 3065. Luo Guang couldn't help but be furious. He was a core disciple of the Red Flame sect, the heir of a celestial king tier force. And nobody dared to ignore him? Are you very strong? But seeing that you're so young, you're at most a severing mundane tier. I'll take you as a fourth severance. And how many such elites were there in the Red Flame sect? To say the least, the Red Flame sect had countless dividing soul tiers. Wang Chuanha glanced at him. I have no enmity with you, and I don't want to kill you. But if you continue to be so ungrateful, don't blame me for being rude. Luo Guang couldn't help but laugh in anger. Brat, do you know who I am? I'm Luo Guang of the Red Flame sect. My grandfather is an elder of the Red Flame sect, an ascending origin tier grade elite, and the sect master of my Red Flame sect is a second heaven celestial king. If this kind of background was announced before Wang Chuanha had met Ling Han, then it would definitely give this young man a great fright. To say nothing of celestial kings, even ascending origin tiers and immortal palace tiers were colossal beings to the Wang clan, and could not be matched at all. But now, Wang Chuanha smiled faintly, and took the initiative to grab at Luo Guang. So what if he was a disciple of a celestial king tier? Are you really going to defy the heavens? Luo Guang smirked coldly, and launched a palm strike at Wang Chuanha. Pung! The moment the two forces collided, Luo Guang's expression instantly changed. Too strong, far surpassing his limits. He didn't dare to hesitate, and immediately unleashed the treasure on him. Xiao! A yellow paper floated out. There was golden light flickering on the paper, exuding a frightening might. This was a treasure that the elders of the Luo clan had bestowed upon him, and could unleash a dividing soul tier attack. However, the number of times it could be used was limited, and it was a consumable. As the golden light flickered, it turned into an ancient character that pressed down on Wang Chuanha. Wang Chuanha roared, and met it with a punch. Pung the character immediately crumbled, but Wang Chuanha also staggered and retreated more than 10 steps. Finally, he was able to stabilize the situation. Luo Guang was shocked. He had already overestimated his opponent, but he hadn't thought that Wang Chuanha was not a fourth severance, but a dividing soul tier. What should he do? Although the talisman in his hand was able to match the opponent, it was a consumable item, and could only be used a limited number of times. Once the power of the talisman was exhausted, how was he going to defend? For a moment, his head was covered in cold sweat. Sir, you should think carefully about the consequences of going against the Red Flame sect, he said in a threatening manner. Wang Chuanha didn't pay any attention to him. Since he was already fighting, he wouldn't show any mercy. This was what Ling Han had taught him. Once he made a move, he wouldn't leave any loose ends. People like him would most likely seek revenge afterwards, so he had to be killed. Boom, he punched again. Luo Guang was helpless, and could only continue to activate the talisman paper to resist Wang Chuanha's attack. On the surface, the two lords seemed to be evenly matched. Luo Guang wasn't at a disadvantage at all. In fact, he was even calmer. All he did was throw out a talisman, and he seemed to be doing it with ease. Thus, the people of the Li clan loudly cheered for him. As expected of young Master Luo, an important disciple of the Red Flame sect is naturally powerful. Bah, what important disciple? It's a core disciple. Yes. Many people started to flatter him. If they could form a good relationship with Luo Guang and enter the Red Flame sect in the future, wouldn't that be like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate? But there were also those with good eyesight who fell into deep thought and shock. How long had it been? 3 years, a mere 3 years. But Wang Chuanha's strength had shockingly reached a height that even the Li clan had to look up to. Who would believe that Wang Chuanha had cultivated this himself? Thus, behind Wang Chuanha definitely stood a great expert, or even a superforce. To be able to cultivate Wang Chuanha in 3 years, then how terrifying would this expert in force be? Just thinking about it was enough to make one feel terrified. Wang Chuanha became more and more ferocious as he fought. After another dozen punches, the golden light on the talisman paper started to dim. Not good. The people of the Li clan understood. The cheers and shouts from before all died down and eventually disappeared. How could they still cheer? They were all going to lose. Bang, as expected. After another 3 punches, the talisman paper directly shattered. Wang Chuanha's killing intent was already blazing, and he punched at Luo Guang. Since he had attacked, he would not show any mercy. You dare! Luo Guang roared. I am a disciple of the Red Flame sect. If you kill me, it will be the same as... Bang, Wang Chuanha's punch landed. Under the pressure of the dividing soul tear, Luo Guang did not even have the ability to retaliate. He was immediately blasted into a rain of blood. Everyone was shocked, speechless. Luo Guang had died just like that. He was a core disciple of the Red Flame sect. If he died here, it would definitely be difficult for Wang Chuanha to escape death. But the Li clan would also have to die with him. It was over, it was all over. The people of the Li clan all glared at Wang Chuanha with hatred. This was all because of him. He had done it on purpose, on purpose. This guy wanted to drag the Li clan down with him. Wang. The rain of blood that Luo Guang had turned into suddenly glowed, forming a human face. This face was obviously incomparably furious. It stared at Wang Chuanha. How dare you? To actually dare to kill this lord's grandson? I've already killed him, so what's the point of saying such nonsense? Wang Chuanha said disdainfully. Damn it, this lord will immediately come and take your life. The human face said. Pa! The figure of light shattered and completely dissipated. The people of the Li clan all felt that they had been lucky. Wang Chuanha had taken the initiative to draw their enmity, and that might possibly save the Li clan from being implicated. Wang Chuanha, Li Jingchu said word by word, and tossed the red veil to one side. The groom had already died, so how could they still get married? If one had to say who was the most dejected with Luo Guang's death, it would definitely be her. It was not that she loved Luo Guang to the bone, but rather because Luo Guang had been her springboard to enter the Red Flame sect. Without Luo Guang to pull strings for her, with her natural talent, how could she be qualified to enter a Celestial King tier sect? You're so vicious, she glared at Wang Chuanha, her gaze incredibly resentful. I'm vicious, Wang Chuanha smirked coldly. Li Jingchu, how forgetful are you? Could it be that you have already forgotten how the members of my Wang clan died? Let me remind you, they were all poisoned by you. And that's why they were defeated and died. So what? Li Jingchu did not care in the slightest. The Li and Wang clans have been enemies for generations, and any unscrupulous methods would not be enough. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your Wang clan for being too stupid. Wang Chuanha revealed a mournful smile. He hated himself. How could he have fallen in love with such a venomous woman? Previously, he had still been puzzled as to why Li Jingchu would act so viciously. Could it be that she had some difficulties? This was a sliver of hope that had flashed through his mind. But now, he knew that he had been too naive all along. She had never fallen in love with him, and everything had been an act, all for the sake of destroying the Wang clan. End of this chapter. Chapter 3066. Such a woman's death was not to be pitied. Wang Chuanha was about to make a move, but at this moment, there was a long howl that sounded like furious thunder. Pa pa pa. Most people fell to the ground. Everyone was overwhelmed with shock. Which expert had arrived? The commotion was just too great. In the blink of an eye, an old man appeared in the main hall. So strange. They had clearly never seen him before. But everyone felt a sense of familiarity. This old man's face was filled with fury. He quickly fixed his eyes on Wang Chuanha. Audacious maniac. You actually dared to kill my beloved grandson. Humph. I am nearby. Do you think you can still leave calmly after killing him? Oh, everyone understood. They had clearly not seen this old man before, but they felt a sense of familiarity. As it turned out, this old man was Luo Guang's grandfather, Luo Shixian. He had appeared as light spots before. This was a great elite of the ascending origin tier. Wang Chuanha did not move, and was as steady as a mountain. It was impossible to say that he was not afraid. After all, the gap in strength was too great. However, after cultivating with Ling Han for 10 years, he had already learned the word calm. Even if the sky collapsed, he would not be moved. Furthermore, Ling Han had once said that he only cared about revenge and did not have to worry about anything else. Did he believe Ling Han's words? Of course he did. This was an existence that even Ma Xianwang had to address as Lord. Would he lie to him? However, in the present situation, could it be that Ling Han could still suddenly appear here? Greetings, Lord. Everyone knelt down, paying their respects to this old man. Luo Xiuxian did not pay them any attention. A group of trash that was at most in the severing mundane tier was not worthy of a second glance from him. Brat, how do you want to die? He asked calmly, but his eyes were filled with hatred. Old man, go to the side. A voice suddenly traveled over. Everyone was surprised. Who was this person? Could it be that he did not know who Luo Xiuxian was? He dared to call him old man, and even told him to go to the side. This was really audacious. Wang Chuanha instantly showed an expression of joy. This was Ling Han. So the other party had been following him all along. He couldn't help but feel excited, because he knew what kind of existence Ling Han was. Even if he wasn't very clear, he at least knew that he was extremely powerful, and even celestial kings had to kneel down to pay respect to him. How could he not be touched that such an important person was always protecting him? Luo Xiuxian looked over, and couldn't help but smirk coldly. And who do you think you are? This is merely a measly severing mundane force. So how could there be so many people who don't know what's good for them? Sigh, this place was too backward. Perhaps everyone thought that the severing mundane tier was the strongest existence, right? Ling Han shook his head. He was just about to slap this fellow to death when he exclaimed softly and looked into the distance. Hong! Multicolored clouds danced in the sky, and a person could be seen treading on a multicolored cloud as he approached. His body was wrapped in multicolored light. Ma Xianwang. When Luo Xiuxian saw this, his expression immediately became solemn. He could look down on everyone here, but in the face of the celestial king, he could only feel fear and trepidation. Ma Xianwang landed, and his eyes swept over. Though they swept over Ling Han, he ignored him. This was because Ling Han had used some trick to prevent the other from discovering him. Honorable nephew, are you all right? His eyes stopped on Wang Chuanha, and it was as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. Thankfully, he was fine. He was a dignified celestial king, so it was naturally impossible for him not to know that an ascending origin tier elite had appeared in his vicinity. At first, he didn't need to take it to heart. It was normal for others to pass by or have some matters, so he didn't need to make a fuss. But the problem was that he was very concerned about Wang Chuanha. Previously, he had deliberately researched the latter's information and knew about the Wang clan. Thus, he guessed that Wang Chuanha had gone to take revenge this time. He was afraid that if something happened to Wang Chuanha, he would be blamed by Ling Han. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. So he immediately rushed over. True enough, his premonition was right. It looked like Wang Chuanha had really been targeted by this ascending origin tier. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Lord Ma. Wang Chuanha bowed slightly. In Ling Han's eyes, this was already very lowly. It should be known that the Ling clan could casually grab a handful of heavenly venerables, so celestial kings really weren't much. However, in everyone's eyes, this was practically like the sky was about to collapse. That was a celestial king, and he actually sucked up to Wang Chuanha so much. This now all the truth was out. No wonder he could become so powerful. There was a celestial king strongly supporting him. In the hearts of these people, celestial kings were omnipotent, so it was very normal for Wang Chuanha to be reborn in 3 years. Only now did Ma Xianwang look towards Luo Xiuxian frowning. There's nothing for you to do here. Go. He flicked his hand. The same words, if said by Ling Han, would cause Luo Xiuxian to explode in fury, but when said by Ma Xianwang, Luo Xiuxian didn't dare to be angry in the slightest, only feeling indignant. He argued for what was right, and said, "My lord, this brat killed my grandson, so please, my lord, let me take revenge." Ma Xianwang swept a pitiful look over him, thinking, putting aside the fact that he only killed your grandson, even if he killed your own son or father, you'd have to tolerate it and accept it, because you couldn't afford to offend the person behind him at all. Of course, he was a dignified celestial king, and didn't need to explain anything to an ascending origin tier. He calmly said, "I'm letting you go, so do you still have any objections?" "I dare not." Luo Xiaoxian gritted his teeth, and was just about to turn and leave, yet he said, "I'm an elder of the Red Flame sect, and the sect master of my sect is also a celestial king. I hope that Milord can reconsider on this account." "Are you using the Red Flame sect to threaten me?" Ma Xuanwang's expression immediately darkened. He smirked coldly in his heart. Putting aside a mere celestial king, even if a heavenly venerable came, so what? The world was vast, but Ling Han was the greatest. "Get lost," he reprimanded. Luo Xiaoxian was helpless, and could only turn and leave. With his weak physique, he didn't dare to challenge a celestial king. Seeing Luo Xiaoxian actually flee with his tail between his legs, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. For the sake of Wang Chuanha, Ma Xianwang was actually willing to offend a celestial king tier force. What kind of doting was this? Li Jingqiu was filled with even more regret. If she had been firm in her belief and followed Wang Chuanha all along, then with Ma Xuanwang's attitude towards Wang Chuanha, even taking her as his personal disciple would be a small matter, right? And now, Luo Guang was dead, and everything was over. No, Luo Guang was dead, but Wang Chuanha was still alive, and deeply favored by a celestial king. Her eyes flickered. At this moment, she had to make an incredibly important decision. In a mere instant, she had already made up her mind. "Chuanha, help me." She stretched out a hand to Wang Chuanha. "Actually, I was forced to do this. I love you so deeply, so how could I possibly betray you? But I had no choice. The clan threatened me with my mother's life. If I did not obey their orders, my mother would be killed by them. This time, it was also the clan that threatened my mother's life, forcing me to marry Luo Guang. Chuanha, save me, save my mother." End of this chapter. Chapter 3067. Even Ling Han was slightly surprised. This woman could actually be so shameless. Was there a need to be so shameless, just to curry favor with the celestial king? He didn't act up, and only watched silently. If Wang Chuanha was wishy-washy and soft-hearted towards this kind of woman, then he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge this descendant. He would directly send him to the 9 heavens, and then ignore him. "Li Jingqiu." The members of the Li clan all roared, appearing incredibly furious. They could understand that you wanted to live, but they couldn't be made the scapegoat. "Chuanha, kill them, kill them," Li Jingqiu called out, a sinister expression flashing on her pretty face, ruining her beauty and making her look slightly sinister. "Kill them all, and I can leave with you. We will love each other and grow old together." She showed a pitiful expression. "Chuanha, haven't you always wanted to marry me? Today, I will marry you." Wang Chuanha was silent. After a while, he shook his head and said, "Do you think I am a 3-year-old child, or that young man who was fooled by you 3 years ago?" He paused, and his killing intent blazed. "Today I have come for revenge. Anyone who is stained with the blood of the Wang clan can forget about escaping. Li Jingqiu, you are one of the main culprits, and dying 100 times is not too much." Li Jingqiu's aura was snatched away. Facing Wang Chuanha's fierce expression, she didn't dare to shout loudly, and only appeared even more pitiful. She said, "Chuanha, just forgive me this once. I will definitely serve you well." "Disgusting," Wang Chuanha said coldly. Shwa, shwa, shwa. With a few strokes of his hand, Li Bing was cut into 10 pieces. The aura of an eternal river tear was very long, and even if he was cut into 10 pieces, he didn't die immediately. Every piece of his body was writhing like an earthworm. This scene was a little bloody, and a little frightening. Wang Chuanha moved again, grabbing another member of the Li clan, and said darkly, "How many members of the Wang clan have you killed?" That person directly broke down in fright, his eyes rolling back as he peed all over himself. "I won't die so easily," Wang Chuanha said coldly, and threw that person to one side after sealing his cultivation level. "Run!" The Li family head shouted. "Split up and run. Although this unfilial son is powerful, he's only one person. He can't stop all of us." Everyone from the Li family tried to escape, but they immediately realized that they couldn't get out of the hall. The people outside couldn't get out of the courtyard, and the people in the town couldn't get out of the town. What was going on? Was this the doing of that unfilial son, Wang Chuanha? Wang Chuanha looked at Ma Xianwang and cupped his hands. Thank you for your help, sir. He didn't have that kind of ability yet, but celestial kings could do it easily. Ma Xianwang nodded and smiled. It's nothing. It was over. It was truly over. Even an immortal king had made a move. Today, even if a dog of the Li clan could escape alive, it would still be a great humiliation for an immortal king. Therefore, the Li family was beyond saving. They were as dead as they could be. Wang Chuanha made a move. As long as someone had participated in the battle of the Wang clan 3 years ago, he would kill them. No matter how many people the other party killed, he would cut them into pieces. His methods could be said to be extremely cruel. He started with the unimportant people. For example, the Li family head, and Li Jingchu naturally had to be left to the end. Otherwise, the joy of revenge wouldn't be at its peak. Ling Han saw this, and shook his head slightly. He didn't have the painful experience of having his clan annihilated. Even though the Wang clan was his bloodline descendant, after so many generations, he had never seen it before. He was furious, but he couldn't feel the same as Wang Chuanha. He was underestimating an immortal king too much. Ma Xianwang, on the other hand, frowned slightly. He did not expect that the Li clan would actually have such great courage to speak in front of him in such a desperate situation. Su Fei smiled ambiguously as he looked at Ma Xianwang without saying a word. Ma Xianwang pondered for a moment and said, "This child is of great importance. Brother Su, it's best you don't interfere." "Oh, could he be Brother Ma's illegitimate son?" Su Fei said with a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 3069. What was the source of spiritual energy? The answer was very simple. Void and intrinsic power. The plane communicated with the void, extracting intrinsic power and condensing it in the core, allowing the plane to operate. As if gaining some kind of life, the plane would then erupt with power. That was spiritual energy. Hence, intrinsic power and spiritual energy were different, but they were related. Everything is related to the void, and the endless power within the void. In that case, the unique power of a plane is also an intrinsic power, just that it has been converted by the plane. Then the eighth power is ultimately the power of the plane. It's still intrinsic power, just strengthened countless times. My body can be seen as an origin world. Then can I create another void? That's the source of my power. I can even take in the void directly. Ling Han was a little shocked by his own delusion. Even madness only dared to devour the origin world, and did not say that he wanted to take the void for himself. The void was too big, and no existence could explore the boundaries of the void. It would not be strange even if there were 1,000 or 10,000 origin worlds here. Let's not think so much. I'd better push the plane in my body to a higher level as soon as possible. That way, I'll truly have the qualifications to fight madness. Also, I have to find Extinction. She still has a life code hidden in her body. However, as long as there are not many planes in the body, having a life code is useless. He came out of seclusion to understand the cultivation progress of the people around him. Those who had become celestial venerables before were basically stuck at the same level. This level was too high. Without special opportunities, it would take at least a long period of time to advance. The other younger generations of the Ling family, with the endless supply of resources, had produced tens of thousands of celestial kings. The current Ling family could be called the world's top aristocratic family. None of the old seven-step families could compare. However, because of the threat of extinction, the Ling family was still relatively low-key. What about Wang Chuanha? Ling Han asked. That kid. Ling Jianshui revealed a strange expression. His luck is simply unimaginable. His martial art talent is obviously ordinary, but he has had many fortuitous encounters. In just a few years, he has already become a celestial venerable. Yes, even Ling Han was very surprised. Compared to his children and grandchildren, he didn't care too much about Wang Chuanha. Yet Wang Chuanha was able to step into the Empyrean realm. This was truly inconceivable. Although Ling Han could kill a 6-step immortal monarch with a single finger, he was unable to push a 9th firmament immortal monarch into a heavenly venerate. This was beyond the laws and involved intrinsic strength. Wang Chuan's talent in martial art was mediocre. In order for him to take revenge as soon as possible, Ling Han didn't even give him a stable foundation. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for him to even become an immortal king. How could he suddenly step into the heavenly lord realm? Is luck really that awesome? Ling Han furrowed his brows. That brat is very vicious. He might even blame the destruction of his family on us. Keep an eye on him, and don't let anything happen to him. Okay, I understand. Ling Jianxue nodded. Ling Han continued his seclusion. After another 5 billion years, he had already deduced all the 4th-rate and 3rd-rate symbols. This increased his cultivation speed by countless times. I've already pushed more than half of the plane to a higher level. My strength is many times stronger than when I fought Frenzy. Coupled with the 3rd-rate heavenly venerate talisman, it should be enough to deal with Frenzy. I'll go to the outer realm battlefield to take a look, especially Poyu and the others. I want to see if they're doing their jobs properly. Also, I want to know what the origins of the current extinction are. Ling Han came out of seclusion and rushed to the outer realm battlefield. He first went to the battlefield. After so much recuperation, the damage to the mother trees had been completely replenished. Another vast army attacked, causing great casualties to the defenders. Ling Han moved and directly fought his way into the Hysteria Plain, wantonly destroying it. Only then did he leisurely leave and turn to enter the main battlefield. What disappointed him was that Chong Yen and the others had long escaped. Not only had these 5 escaped, but Golden Silkworm and 10,000 Shadows were also gone. Now, only the 7 Supremes were left, and they were still bitterly holding on. But Frenzy was too powerful. A single tentacle lashed out, and the 7 Supremes could only be sent flying. They were practically unable to stop Frenzy's footsteps. The main battlefield was quickly falling. If this continued, in at most a few billion years, the entire Xuanma Plain would definitely become Frenzy's meal. Ling Han gave a long howl and raised his fist to meet Frenzy's attack. His speed was extremely fast. His figure transformed into a ray of light, and he was already charging towards Frenzy. He punched out. Boom! A terrifying power vibrated. Pung pung pung. Lin Luo and the other 7 Supremes were all sent flying like toys. Fortunately, the physique of the 7 Supremes was not bad, and they were only sent flying. They were not injured in the slightest. Ling Han! The 7 Supremes exclaimed in shock. What did they see? Ling Han punched out, forcibly blocking Frenzy's attack. Hiss! There was actually an existence that could match Frenzy in this world. What was even more inconceivable and unbelievable was that Ling Han was actually still only at the 6th Supremes. 6 Supremes, heavens! If this fellow advanced to the 7th Supremes, just how terrifying would he be? But Ling Han knew that if he advanced to the 7th Supremes, then his greatest gain would be that he would possess an indestructible body. On the other hand, he would also be able to open the door to transforming his internal plane into a super advanced plane. Power. In truth, he would not be able to increase his power by too much in a short period of time, because right now his greatest source of power was the power of the plane. This was not something that could be achieved in a single step, as his cultivation level increased. He would need a long period of time to cultivate and increase his power. Seniors, you have worked hard, said Ling Han, his entire person emitting a boundless domineering aura. From today onwards, we will switch from defense to offense and chase Frenzy out. No matter who said these words, they would all sound like a joke. But right now, Ling Han's domineering aura, which was on par with Frenzy in a single strike, caused everyone to have no choice but to believe him. He had the qualifications to do so. Kill. The spirits of the 7 Supremes were greatly roused. They had waited for so many years and finally, a person who could reverse the situation had appeared. Ling Han. Frenzy sent out a sharp spiritual wave. It was extremely hateful. Last time, it had not been able to kill Ling Han, which made it realize that it had missed the final chance to eliminate Ling Han. As expected this time, Ling Han had made a comeback and already possessed the power to contend against it. Frenzy, your era has ended. Ling Han gave a long howl and attacked powerfully. The seven Supremes assisted from the side. Although their power was far from being comparable to Frenzy's, they were still at the seventh Supremes, after all, and could still be of some use. Furthermore, they had an indestructible body, so it was completely no problem for them to act as sandbags. End of chapter. Chapter 3070. Boom. Boom. Ling Han, on the other hand, was the absolute main force, fighting Frenzy head-on. Scram! His entire body glowed, and all of his third-rate talismans were activated, boosting his strength by 6,000 times. Even Frenzy could not withstand this attack, and its tentacles were sent flying. When Ling Han finished his attack, Frenzy had been forced back 700,000 kilometers. The seven Supremes were all extremely excited. They had been fighting Frenzy for so many years, and they had always been the ones being forced back by Frenzy. They had never been able to hold their ground for even a day. But now, Frenzy pushed back. This was something that had never happened before. All of them were extremely excited, and even felt their scalps go numb. Seven Steps was also a human, and had emotions. Ling Han activated the fourth-rate talisman again. Although the boost was reduced to 5,000 times, it was still extremely powerful, and it continued to fight Frenzy back. This time, it was pushed back a little less, 500,000 kilometers. Then, Ling Han activated the fifth-rate talisman. All of the combined talismans were activated, and Frenzy was also forced back more than 2 million kilometers, setting a new precedent. Ling Han finished his attack and stood still. He said calmly, "Do you still want to continue?" Frenzy waved its tentacles. Its situation was special. Although transforming into a plane made it stronger, it also lost some of its abilities, such as activating the Celestial Venerable symbol. Before this was not a problem at all. The Celestial Venerable symbol had a time limit, and it took too long to recharge. Moreover, it had absolute crushing power over 7 steps, so it was fine even if it could not activate the Celestial Venerable symbol. But now, Ling Han's original power was basically equal to its own. Whether or not he could activate the Celestial Venerable symbol would be a huge matter. If this continued, it would be forced back step by step, and then it would completely leave the two-realm battlefield. When that time came, Ling Han would charge into its plane, and it would not be able to start another war. "You can't be this strong," Frenzy rumbled. "Unless you obtain the secret of the world." Secret of the world life code. Ling Han's heart shook. The core of the world should not exist. Extinction had made it up to deceive him, and Chong Yan's group. But what secret of the world was it now? His inconceivable power came from the ball of light in his sea of consciousness. In theory, it was like a secret that could never be revealed to the world. He himself could not discover the ball of light in his sea of consciousness, and it had to be resonated with him. Basically, there was no possibility of discovering it. Yet, due to countless coincidences, Ling Han discovered this secret and activated this ability. That must be the case. Frenzied emotions seemed to be extremely agitated. "I really didn't expect that after plotting for so many years, you would actually seize the initiative." "That must be," Ling Han said. Frenzy said. "It contains the formation." "That's right, it contains the secrets of the Yuan world's formation. Once I obtain it, I'll be able to break through the shackles and leap out of this pond," said Frenzy. When Lin Luo and the others heard this, they were all shocked and jumped out of the pond. "What did that mean?" Ling Han said. "Then what's beyond this pool?" he thought. Frenzy had looked down on him as a frog at the bottom of a well, which made his imagination run wild. He guessed that there were more origin worlds in the void. Now that Frenzy mentioned it, he had to go with the flow. Otherwise, when Frenzy calmed down, it would be difficult to get more information. "It could be a bigger world, or it could be nothingness," Frenzy said. Even Frenzy did not know. Ling Han smiled. Pung pung pung. No one expected such a turn of events, and Lin Luo and the others were instantly sent flying. Fortunately, The 7 steps of undying and indestructible had a strong physique. This could only send them flying, but it could not hurt them at all. Chong Yen, Golden Silkworm, are you guys crazy? Xi and Fu shouted sternly. What were they doing? Were they helping Frenzy? Chong Yen and the others did not reply. They only launched powerful attacks, restraining Lin Luo and the others. However, Ling Han was the main battle force. As long as he activated the power of the celestial sovereign symbol, Frenzy could only be forced to retreat. Even if Chong Yen and the others joined in, it would be useless. Boom! An incomparably powerful aura swept over, and a graceful figure appeared. It was as if she had stepped through the ages, and with an incomparably terrifying power, she slashed towards Ling Han. Extinction. Even if he could travel through dimensions, it was very likely that Annihilation would have seized the opportunity to kill him in one blow. After all, Annihilation was much stronger than Chong Yen and the others. What does this have to do with madness? Ling Han asked. Why should I tell you? Annihilation said coldly. Shua. Madness waved a tentacle over. Although it was also very confused as to why its previous incarnation would appear to help it. How could it not use a helper when it had one? I'll stop him. You do what you need to do. Annihilation said as she fought fiercely with Ling Han. Her power was really not weaker than Ling Han's. Not only was her strength outstanding, but she could also use the Celestial Lord symbol. This made it seem like she had become a second Ling Han, and she could completely fight them head-on. Now, the battle prowess of Stage 7 had been restrained, and there was no one left to stop Madness. Boom! Madness took the opportunity to counterattack, frantically attacking the city and plundering the land. In just one day, it had reclaimed all the land it had lost. Without the obstruction of Stage 7, it charged straight in, its pace of invasion constantly increasing. Ling Han left Annihilation behind and charged towards Madness, but Annihilation immediately chased after him. The two of them were evenly matched, and it was very difficult to shake off the other. Annihilation alone was enough to stop Ling Han, and vice versa. Ling Han could also stop Annihilation. Of course, the prerequisite was that Madness was strong enough. Otherwise, if it were Chong Yen and the others, they would have been sent flying by a single slap from Ling Han. Madness was indeed affected a little, but it was not enough to stop its frenzied advance. Ling Han stopped struggling. Let's welcome the arrival of a great era. Annihilation said. There was actually no point in them fighting like this. You can't hurt me, and I can't hurt you. No one could do anything to the other. Thus, Annihilation clearly did not want to be entangled with Ling Han. Even if she wanted to kill Ling Han, now was not the time. Let Madness devour the entire origin world. That's your so-called great era. Ling Han said coldly. Have you forgotten what I told you? Annihilation said proudly. The 8th type of power is opposition. After the ultimate destruction, what will come is an even more vigorous vitality. What kind of new life can be exchanged for the destruction of the entire origin world? Ling Han said calmly. Soft-hearted. Annihilation said coldly. At our level, do we still need to care about those ants? Ling Han, we can work together and break through this small puddle. There's no need. Ling Han rejected. Then you can only be drowned by the torrent of the era. Annihilation said. She kept pestering Ling Han, not letting Ling Han have a chance to stop Madness. The Supremes were all fighting, but it was meaningless. There were no casualties, and no one was even bleeding. There was only Madness constantly advancing. Ling Han frowned. With Annihilation and the others holding him back, Madness could not be stopped. What to do? Go, he suddenly said, sending out a wave of divine sense. If this continued, the result would be that they could only watch helplessly as the origin world was swallowed up bit by the frenzy, and there was nothing they could do. But if they left now, at least Ling Han could still cultivate and become stronger. Moreover, if this continued, it would not be long before Madness devoured the Xuanma Plain. There were friends and relatives of Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the others there. Thus, the wisest thing to do at this time was to retreat. Lin Luo and the others were all at the 7th step. They were naturally decisive people who could rise and fall. With a thought, they made up their minds and gathered around Ling Han. End of chapter. Chapter 3073. Chong Yin and the other four came from the previous Yuan world. After the collapse of a world, they slept for so many years. Their way of thinking has changed. Although it is unforgivable, at least there are traces. But Thousand Shadows and Golden Silkworm, humph. Blood Rainbow Celestial's eyes were sharp and murderous. Thousand Shadows could advance 7 steps with the help of the plain core fragment. Now they betrayed us. This is unforgivable. Xian Fu's eyes were also fierce. They hated them so much they wanted to kill. But this was destined to be a beautiful dream. Even if Thousand Shadows and Golden Silkworm advanced 7 steps not long ago, and their battle power could not compare to the old powerhouses, they still had the characteristic of immortality. Lin Lua waved his hand. This is already a fact. There is no point in talking about it. What we need now is a countermeasure. This is the last super high-level plane of the Yuan world. We must defend it. Otherwise, everything will be over, Wu Jihong said. Ling Han shook his head. We can't defend it. Blood Rainbow Celestial frowned. Don't destroy our morale. This is the truth, Ling Han said. He dared to fight 7 steps when he was 5 steps. Now he would not be afraid of 7 steps. But they were on the same side, so his attitude was more relaxed. Disregarding frenzy, the opponent's strength at 7 steps is the same as ours. Their battle power is also very compatible. So, if they target us one by one, no one can stop frenzy. All the Supremes were silent. It was easy to say such bold words, but in the face of the bloody truth, they could not pretend not to see it. Then, what do you think we should do? Xian Fu looked at Ling Han. Ling Han thought about it and said, first, second retreat. What did he mean? Everyone looked at Ling Han. They had to admit that Ling Han was the biggest support of the Yuan world now. Ling Han said, it is impossible to defend the Xianmo plane. Thus we will wait. When this plane is engulfed in a frenzy, we will pluck the grain from the fire and snatch the core of the plane. If we can get the plane core, Brother Xian, Brother Wu, Brother Bai, and Lady Lin can all advance 7 steps. If they reach the 7th step, even if their combat strength can't catch up for a while, they will have the indestructible body and have the right to fight against frenzy. Even if there are only 4 of us, we can at least slow down the frenzied pace. In addition, let's retreat to the lower planes. Let them devour everything, and buy me some time. He paused. I still have a lot of room for improvement. I haven't reached the peak of the 6th step. The so-called peak of the 6th step was not the perfection of the 5 essential powers, but the plane within his body. Everyone clenched their teeth. His strength soared all the way, from barely suppressing a peak of the 7th step to suppressing 5 supreme beings by himself. In the end, he could even resist the berserk pushing it back. These were all things he did at the 6th step. With such a leap, it would not be surprising to say that he had gone from the 7th step to the 8th step. But this guy had not even cultivated to the peak of the 6th step. How could it not be shocking? Ling Han glanced at the others again and said, we can start moving now. We'll move the people from the medium planes to the lower planes as much as possible. We can even directly retreat to the last plane in the immortal region and fight to the death with frenzy and the others. This determination was too big. He retreated to the end with 1 step, not leaving a way out for himself. How ruthless. The 7 supreme beings looked at each other and fell into deep thought. Once they really fell into that state, there would be no way out. Even detonating the origin world to perish together with frenzy would be impossible. It's impossible now. Ling Han shook his head. Since frenzy has suffered such a loss, it's impossible for him to fall in the same ditch again. This was very disappointing, but the 7 supreme beings nodded slowly. If it was them, it was impossible for them to suffer the same loss twice in a row, let alone frenzy. Frenzy turned into a plane to avoid the destructive bombardment of the origin world. The plane was too big. If his main body hid in a corner, he might be able to escape. Alright, I agree. Lin Lua was the first to nod. I agree too. Zhou Heng nodded. I agree. Chu Hao was the third to express. After hesitating for a moment, Xi and Fu and the others finally nodded slowly. Since Ling Han still had room for improvement, then they would place their bets on him. Since everyone has reached a consensus, let's start. Don't waste time. Lin Luo said. They didn't need to ask for the opinions of others at all. Without reaching the 7th step, there was no qualification to discuss with them. The 7th step was the god of celestial venerables. Ling Han crossed the plain and sent all the important people to the immortal region first. Arriving at this familiar place, Ling Han couldn't help but feel emotional. After going one round, did he still have to settle everything here? The other celestial venerables naturally received the news and began to move with their clansmen. In short, they sent as many people as possible. These were all living beings. If they could save one, it was one. They were the seeds of the future. After settling the worries, Ling Han began his closed-door training. What was most needed now was his combat power. If he could have overwhelming power, he could solve all problems. Before his closed-door training, there was one thing that slightly distracted him, and that was Wang Chuanha's disappearance. He couldn't find him no matter how hard he tried. It was as if he had completely disappeared from this world. There was no such person at all. This guy was a celestial venerable and had enough self-protection ability. He had an explosive luck attribute, so he shouldn't be in any danger. Ling Han thought for a moment, put aside his worry about this descendant, and officially began his closed-door training. He activated all the celestial venerable symbols in his body, communicated with the void, and drew a huge amount of intrinsic power to refine his body. On the other hand, his plane was also developing vigorously. It automatically drew energy from the void, turning it into nourishment for the plane, and propelling the development of the plane. Since there was already life in the plane, could he send the life from the outside world in? Ling Han thought. He thought of the worst-case scenario. If he couldn't stop the madness, he would use his body as the origin world to carry all the life now. I hope it doesn't have to come to this. Although he thought so, Ling Han still tried it, sending the queen and the others into a plane in his cells. The result was feasible. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. That meant that as long as he didn't die, the people around him would be safe forever. He focused on cultivation. The Xuanma plane was already inevitably going to be destroyed, so they definitely had to obtain the plane core. This could allow their side to gain a few more 7-step prodigies. Furthermore, he might be able to push his cultivation level up another level and reach the peak stage of the 6th step. Time, what he lacked was time. Time flew, and 600 million years passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han received news that the Xuanma plane had already been more or less swallowed by the madness, and the plane core was about to be exposed. Depart. Ling Han, Lin Luo, and the other 7th-step sovereigns arrived at the Xuanma plane. By now, this super high-level plane didn't live up to its name anymore. It was so small that it could only be compared to a city. Reading on his phone. Reading on his phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3075. In these hundreds of millions of years, Ling Han had not only been cultivating, but also deducing all the first-rate symbols. He skipped the second-rate symbols, and first created the first-rate symbols, wanting to maximize his battle prowess. He hadn't used them before, because they were meaningless. Even if madness and annihilation were beaten to the ground, so what? They were immortal. Now that it was the most crucial moment of fighting for the plane core, he wouldn't hold back anymore. Hong! Under the support of 8,000 times the strength, Ling Han's whole body glowed, and the sound of his blood surging was like the heavens and the earth cracking. He punched out, annihilating all movement. Only his fist sliced through the sky, illuminating the stars. Pung pung. So what if it was madness and annihilation? Faced with such an explosion, they were no match at all, and were all sent flying. Ling Han attacked Chong Yen and the others again, sending them flying as well, making space for Lin Luo and the others to collect the plane core fragment. Ling Han! Annihilation roared. In that short instant, more than half of the plane core fragment had been taken by Lin Luo and the others. She was filled with hatred, but didn't attack Ling Han again. Instead, she went to chase the plane core fragment. Get lost! She struck out with the palm, and Xian Fu was instantly sent flying. There was no suspense. The difference in power was too great. She reached out and grabbed again, obtaining a plain core fragment. On the other side, Madness also attacked aggressively, taking a fragment. After all, they were the two strongest people in the world. Aside from Ling Han, no one could resist their edge. Ling Han took a look. The core fragments of the plane had already found their own masters, and the majority of them had landed on his side. Thus he roared and said, "Go!" Lin Luo and the others didn't linger. Their goal here was the plane core. And now that it was divided, was there any need to linger? With Ling Han bringing up the rear, the 7 paragons retreated together. When Lin Luo and the others left, Ling Han guarded the passage between the two realms and said calmly, "The next time we fight, it will be a life-and-death battle." Annihilation and Frenzy did not attack again. Frenzy could not chase into another plane, and if Annihilation was alone, his combat power was slightly inferior to Ling Han's. So why did he chase after them? Was he looking for a beating? Who doesn't know how to boast? When the time comes, you will naturally know who will fall. Extermination said coldly. Ling Han turned around and left, ignoring him. After returning to the plane of the immortal region, Lin Luo and the others distributed the plane core fragments. Of course, this was for Lin Yulian, Wu Haoyang and the others. As long as they could take 7 steps forward, it would greatly change the current situation. Ling Han had also obtained a few fragments. He was the main force fighting against Frenzy and Extinction. Increasing his strength was the most important thing. He thought about it and decided not to use the fragments immediately. Instead, he put them away. He still had some time. He wanted to rely on his own efforts to advance to the peak of the 6th step, and then use these fragments to help him advance to the 7th step. Of course, the possibility of this was infinitely small. Even if a complete plane core was given to Ling Han, it might not be able to help him successfully advance to the 7th step. Ling Han was patient and held his breath. He put down all his burdens. What he needed to do now was to increase his cultivation. This was the key to solving everything. Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and the others were also in seclusion to refine the plane core. Even if they could break through to the 7th step, this was not something that could be done in a day. It would take hundreds of millions of years. Since Lin Luo and the other Supremes had nothing to do, they attacked Frenzy at the front lines, trying to slow down its pace of attack and buy time for Ling Han and the others. However, Chong Yen and the others were not to be trifled with. Lin Luo and the others were completely futile. After the Xuanma plane, not only were there no more super high-level planes, but there were also no more high-level planes. Frenzy's devouring speed naturally skyrocketed. Destroying a plane only required the effort of 1,000,000 years. And as it devoured more and more planes, its speed was still accelerating. Hundreds of thousands of years for one plane. Hundreds of thousands of years for one plane. When all the middle-level planes disappeared, Frenzy's devouring speed was reduced to less than 10,000 years. Fortunately, heavenly venerables below the 7th step were all helping to evacuate the living beings in those planes. However, planes were so big, even heavenly venerables had their limits. Those that could be moved to the celestial territory were actually less than 1%. 5 billion years later, Ling Han finally came out of seclusion. He had already advanced all the planes in his body to a higher level. Now that he was limited by his realm, every plane had reached its limit. He could not advance any further and advance to a higher level. At this time, White Rice, Lin Yulian, and the others also came out of seclusion. They had withstood the pressure and successfully advanced to the 7th step. After they stabilized their realm, they would be very helpful helpers. Ling Han gathered Ning Haixin and the others who had light orbs in their consciousness. Now that his strength had improved, he might be able to find out more secrets in their light orbs. This involved the secret of the origin world. It was the most precious treasure. They resonated with the light orbs in their consciousness again. Under the impact of the raging waves, Ning Haixin and the others fainted. However, Ling Han withstood this kind of impact. In that split second, he had peeped into many secrets. Why Ning Haixin had such a strong affinity? why Ma Qinggao's divine soul was so powerful, why Fei had an unparalleled understanding of formations, and why he was skilled in alchemy in the past. He was unreasonably strong. He could learn any alchemy recipe once he learned it, and he could even create new alchemy recipes out of thin air. This was the code of the entire origin world. The previous life code was only a part of it. Of course, it was also the most important part. The other abilities could only be said to be icing on the cake. Intense changes were happening in Ling Han's body. In his consciousness, a golden lotus bloomed, and comprehension bloomed like a flower. All the life code that he had obtained appeared. This was still a missing part, but now the missing part was automatically manifesting and condensing into a ring. Ling Han sensed that in a faraway place, there were people similar to him resonating, and there was more than one. Annihilation Wang Chuanha. It was as if this had connected them together, crossed time and space, and interweaved the essence of the world. Ling Han did not know if Annihilation had seen these life code, but he felt that this flash was too short. He had been completely prepared, but he had almost missed it. Annihilation had been caught off guard, and should not have been able to catch it in time. He digested this code, and only felt that his body had undergone an inexplicable change, but he could not say what it was exactly. Time passed quietly, and another 900 million years had passed. Ling Han was forcibly summoned. There was no other way. Madness had already invaded the foreign land. As long as the foreign land was destroyed, it would be the celestial realm. Completing these last two steps, madness had achieved its goal and devoured the entire origin world. Reading on the phone. Chapter 3076. The final battle was about to arrive. Ling Han made the final preparations and tried to take as many people into the plane in his body. This tiny celestial realm was already overcrowded. There were countless planes in his body, and they were all high-level enough to accommodate a sixth-step celestial venerable, including the Empress, Hunyou, and the others. Ling Han took them all into his body. In this aspect, no one could compare to Ling Han. For example, Lin Luo, Zhou Heng, and the others had one or two planes in their bodies, but though they had cultivated their planes to a high-level, they could not give birth to life. Without the life code, how could life be created? This was something only Ling Han could do. Extinction might also be able to do it, because she had also intercepted the life code, but not as much as Ling Han. Thus, after the seventh step, all living beings entered Ling Han's body, and he seemed to have become an origin world. In the outside world, there were only a few seventh steps left. Lin Luo, Xian Fu Wu Jihong, Bai Fan and Blood Rainbow Heavenly Venerable, the 5 old seventh steps, and Zhou Heng, Chu Hao Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, Xian Chihu, and Bai Fan, the 6 new seventh steps, a total of 11 people. Together with Ling Han, this was the lineup for the final battle against madness. The foreign plane was quickly falling, devouring almost the entire Yuan world. The current madness was already incomparably powerful. The devouring speed had also reached a new height. In just a trifling 300 years, the foreign plane had completely disappeared. A trifling low-level plane wouldn't be of much help to madness, but devouring all other planes was a complete process. He couldn't give up just because the immortal region and foreign realms were too weak. That would make it incomplete. Ling Han was still cultivating. Previously, he had focused all his energy on studying the secrets of the origin world, such as the life code. So he had not completely deduced the second-rate heavenly venerable symbols. Since he was idle, he sat cross-legged, his mind continuously comprehending. He had already obtained all the secrets of the origin world, and with such support, deducing the heavenly venerable symbols became extremely easy. This was originally just a method to communicate with the intrinsic power. However, after 3 years, Ling Han opened his eyes, which were filled with densely packed symbols. He was obviously sitting there, but Lin Luo and the others all had a feeling that he was so far away, as if Ling Han had entered into another dimension. Wang, with a thought from Ling Han, 9 runes appeared on his body. These were all the Empyrean symbols, from the 9th tier to the 1st tier, complete and flawless. Every single symbol was resonating. Even though they were releasing energy, they were also being charged, growing and multiplying endlessly. Where to go? It was a perfect cycle, a whole. Ling Han gave an "oh," and with another thought, the 9 runes fused again, turning into a Tai Chi diagram. Yin-yang, life, death, positive and negative, they mutually opposed and generated each other. Ling Han tore open the void and casually flicked his finger. Pung, the void instantly exploded. This destructive power was terrifying to the extreme, a 100,000 times increase in strength. When all the Empyrean runes revolved together, and in a situation where they were fused together, the increase in strength was as high as 100,000 times. Pooh! Ling Han immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. This power was too strong, and it was a huge burden on Ling Han's body. His body of 6 steps was actually unable to bear it. On the other side, Lin Luo and the others stared with wide eyes. The destructive power of this attack was too terrifying, and they were all moved. If this hit their bodies, would it kill them as well? Perhaps their physical bodies could not be destroyed, but if their spiritual seas suffered such an attack, their souls would most likely scatter. This guy was only 6 steps, so how could he have such astonishing room for growth? However, it was also very difficult for Ling Han to unleash such an attack. After all, he did not have an indestructible body, and he could not bear the surge of such power. Ling Han, how are you? Everyone asked. Ling Han's face was full of depression. He could not imagine that the current problem was not that his strength was insufficient, but that his physique could not keep up. Fortunately, the planes in his body all emitted a strong aura of life. In just an instant, his slightly cracked skin immediately healed, and he recovered to his original state. Empyreans were hated by heaven and earth, so heaven and earth could not nourish Empyreans. However, Ling Han's body had formed a world, and the planes in his body were his cells, a part of him. How could they not nourish him? This kind of explosion was not a small burden for him, but as long as it was not too frequent, he could still bear it. The final battle is about to begin, said Xianfu. With the acute senses of 7 steps, he could already sense a terrifying aura approaching. It was indescribably powerful. That was frenzy, which had devoured almost the entire origin world. No one could imagine how powerful it had become. Bang! Everyone felt the ground shake, and they saw that the originally clear sky had instantly turned pitch black. Fortunately, they were all Empyreans, and they could see clearly no matter how dark it was. Rebirth. Countless tentacles fell from the sky, pressing down on the entire immortal region. Frenzy attacked. Frenzy attacked. It wanted to devour this final plane and complete its ultimate goal. The immortal region, the place where Ling Han had started, would now become the final battlefield. The beginning and the end. Kill! Ling Han and the others all charged out. They directly tore open the void and jumped out of the plane. From the void, one could see an indescribably huge octopus stretching out countless tentacles, surrounding the plane of the immortal region. To make a comparison, if frenzy was a huge mountain, then the immortal region was just a stalk of grass. Of course, they could not just stand by and watch. They all charged out and attacked frenzy, wanting to stop it from devouring the immortal region. Sigh, why can't you all be more obedient? How good would it be to be like a turtle hiding in its shell like before? Mija's voice traveled over. She led Yen and the others out. Her gaze swept over, and after discovering that Ling Han and the others had joined Lin Yulian and the other 3, she could not help but smile. So you have helpers. No wonder you dare to come out and fight. However, you are not the only ones who have helpers. She looked behind her. Come out. Wang. A figure walked over from an endless distance, emitting a powerful aura that could suppress the heavens. This was a 7th-step supreme being. Another 7-step martial artist actually appeared in the world. But when he saw this person's appearance, Ling Han instantly felt a sense of disbelief from the bottom of his heart, and he was extremely shocked. Wang Chuanha. This newly advanced 7th step was actually Wang Chuanha. How could that be? To say nothing of anything else, how many years had it been? How could someone who had once been a heavenly body tier elite become a 7th step venerable tier? Moreover, Wang Chuanha's talent could only be said to be ordinary. It would be difficult for him to become an immortal king just by relying on his own hard work, let alone becoming an Empyrean. However, right now Wang Chuanhe was standing right in front of him, the power of 7 steps surging, not the slightest bit fake. End of chapter. Chapter 3078. Ling Han's battle with frenzy and annihilation had already surpassed the 7th step level. It was not something that Lin Luo and Chong Yan could interfere with, even if frenzy and annihilation were still at the 7th step in theory. And Ling Han was only at the 6th step. They were far beyond the peak of the 7th step level. Ling Han fought bitterly. He was very powerful. And after he completely grasped the heavenly venerable tear symbols, his explosive power had truly reached a terrifying level. Perhaps even a body of 7 steps would be destroyed with a single strike, or even be smashed to pieces. But the power of frenzy and annihilation was also incomparably strong. After dissolving most of his attacks, the indestructible body of a 7th step expert could withstand the remaining power. On the other hand, Ling Han was only at the 6th step, and his physique was his weakness. After a long battle, this weakness was gradually exposed. He was bathed in blood, and even his meridians were beginning to boil, as if they were about to explode. Ling Han, the arrival of the Great Era cannot be stopped. If you insist on going against the trend, you will only be crushed to death. Extermination laughed loudly. Although she and Frenzy were continuously being blasted back, there was no substantial effect. On the other hand, it was Ling Han who was ultimately going to be worn down. Why not embrace the new era? Ling Han laughed. What kind of bullshit new era is this? I want to shatter it all. Idiot. Annihilation's expression was cold. Then die. 2 peerless villains attacked Ling Han together, forcing him to use his full strength. He could not relax at all, and let him injure himself. If this continued, whether it was 10 years or 100 years, Ling Han would eventually be tormented to death by himself. Lin Luo and the others naturally understood and were anxious. This kind of battle was no longer something they could participate in. It was a small matter if they went up and were directly sent flying. They might even be crushed to pieces. Haha. Chong Yan and the others were very happy. They had been bullied by Ling Han too badly. Even 5th Sovereign had been suppressed by Ling Han. Golden Silkworm had almost become Ling Han's servant, and Thousand Shadows had run away as soon as they saw Ling Han, leaving behind shameful memories. Now that Ling Han was in a terrible situation, they were naturally very happy. This unfilial son is finally going to taste retribution. I've let him live for so long. It's time to take his life. White Rice hollered, "Shut up." He then attacked. However, their strength was similar, and 7 steps could not injure 7 steps. Even if Chong Yan and the others did not block, they would still be fine. This attack could not injure them at all. However, 7 steps naturally wanted face, who would be willing to be sent flying everywhere. Thus, Chong Yan and the others still retaliated, and the two sides once again engaged in a fierce battle. Ling Han was also aware of his own situation. If he continued to erupt like this, he would definitely be torn apart by the terrifying power within his body. He must not die. Otherwise, the people in the planes in his body would die with him. Then what do we do? Retreat, let chaos devour the immortal region. This won't do. Ling Han shook his head in his heart. There was only one way to go. He took out a few fragments of the realm core and pressed them against his chest, immediately beginning to refine them. This was the core of the Xianemo plane. He had kept it for the sake of breaking through to the 7th step. Now he needed a 7th step physique. Come, let's see if he could sense the 6th source of power under such high pressure. As long as he could sense it, he could extract a trace of power to refine his body. Then his physique would immediately reach the 7th step of indestructible. In that case, the rebounding force that caused him to vomit blood and his skin to explode would be nothing. Chaos and extinction would no longer be a threat. On the contrary, he opened the upper limit of raising the plane to a higher level. When that time came, he would become stronger and stronger. Only he could suppress chaos and extinction. Come, let's take a gamble. He refined the fragment of the plane core, because the plane extracted the source of power from the void, and turned it into its own power. This source of power was absorbed and converted through the plane core. Thus, refining the plane core would allow him to see the source of power. Most importantly, Ling Han's own power was too strong. It severely affected his ability to sense the final source of power. On the other hand, this was just a fragment of the plane core. It was not complete, so the effect would be much weaker. Thus, it depended on whether Ling Han could withstand the immense pressure. Come, 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 Ling Han shouted in his heart. He opened every pore on his body to sense the only unknown particle. Annihilation and Madness saw this and sped up their attacks. They wanted to prevent Ling Han from breaking through to the 7th step. Boom! The battle between the two of them was incredibly intense. Ling Han continuously spat out blood. This was not caused by the attacks of frenzy and annihilation, but rather by his own backlash. His injuries were getting worse and worse. Even with the powerful vitality of the plane in his body, the recovery speed could not keep up with the damage to his body. A cruel smile appeared on Annihilation's face. Die. I can't help but want to devour your body and learn all your secrets. Ling Han did not speak. He just fought with all his might. 1 day, 3 days, 10 days. This was too unexpected for Annihilation and Madness. Ling Han actually held on, even though his situation was getting worse. This person's will was too terrifying. But everything ends here. Annihilation sneered and attacked even more fiercely. Bang, blood burst out of Ling Han's body. Then he had no more strength to fight back. Madness and Annihilation would not hold back. This was naturally taking advantage of his weakness to take his life. They poured their attacks on Ling Han. This guy's physique was not indestructible. Thus, as long as they could create an opening, they could completely blast him to pieces. Boom, boom, boom. An endless storm of energy exploded. The two peerless villains attacked in a frenzy. This was too frightening. In the surging storm of energy, Lin Luo, Chong Yan, and the others could not see clearly. But they knew that the odds were against Ling Han. After all, he had a body at the 6th step. Once his body's defenses failed, he would definitely be blasted to pieces. Lin Luo and the others were very anxious. Putting aside the fact that Chong Yan and the other Supremes were holding back, even if they were let go, could they stop Madness and Annihilation? Any one of them could seriously injure them, or even kill them. What should they do? Was this the end? Was the situation hopeless? Madness and Annihilation finally stopped, and the storm of energy also slowly dissipated. When the void stabilized, they saw that Ling Han was floating in the air, his limbs hanging limply. His body and surroundings were covered in blood. Dead. The expressions of Lin Luo and the others changed drastically. They could no longer sense Ling Han's aura. Then everything would really be over. Ha 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 ha. Chong Yan and the others laughed loudly. They had waited for this day for a long time. Annihilation suddenly turned around. She had been about to attack Lin Luo and the others. Madness also stopped. It had been about to devour the plane of the immortal realm. In the void, Ling Han's finger moved slightly. Chapter 3080. Destroying a plane, and a super high-grade one at that. Given the number of planes, Ling Han couldn't bear to do so. Extinction was really ruthless. Patriarch, I was wrong. Wang Chuanhe shouted. He wanted to release the power of 7 steps and fight extinction with all his might. But the difference in power was too great. In extinction's hands, he was like a chick in the claws of an eagle. He couldn't resist at all. Ling Han wanted to rush over, but extinction only slapped Wang Chuanhe once, and he coughed up blood. He suddenly had no strength to rush over. This blood kill method was not an ordinary secret technique. It involved the secrets of the origin world. Ling Han was helpless. Extinction had paid such a huge price. How could it be so easy to resolve it? Hurry up and do what you should be doing. Extinction shouted at Frenzy. Frenzy stared at her. This was its previous incarnation, but now it felt a strong sense of unfamiliarity. What kind of existence was it? It was naturally unhappy to be scolded like this, but it endured it. As long as it devoured the celestial realm, the entire origin world's power would be added to its body. At that time, it would be the strongest expert, able to suppress and kill any existence. Alright, I'll let you be arrogant for now. Frenzy flew towards the celestial realm. It was only a temporary partnership with extinction. It couldn't tolerate any existence that could be above its head. Ling Han wanted to stop it, but he couldn't move at all. Extinction had only slapped Wang Chuanha once, and he felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. His face turned pale. He could definitely take it better than Wang Chuanha. Even if Wang Chuanha was killed by extinction, he wouldn't die. But the problem was that extinction only needed to restrain him and let frenzy devour the last plane. What about Lin Luo and the others? There was nothing they could do. What should they do? Even if Ling Han had already advanced 7 steps and had unparalleled combat power, could he still not prevent the worst from happening? Although Lin Luo and the others all hoped that this was a dream, things didn't go as they wished. Frenzy had already enveloped the celestial realm again and started to devour it. At its speed, the celestial realm would definitely disappear in 10 years at most. 10 years? Could Ling Han change the unfavorable situation in such a short time and turn the situation around? However, looking at the current situation, Ling Han was completely restrained by the blood-killing art. There was no way for him to turn the situation around. The key was Wang Chuanha. Lin Luo and the others were filled with killing intent. As long as they killed Wang Chuanha, Ling Han would be freed. Kill Lin Luo, and the others all charged towards Mieju. However, Chong Yen and the others were not to be trifled with. Under their efforts, only 4 of them managed to reach Mieju. Are you trying to throw your life away? Mieju sent out a palm strike. Pow 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 pow. The 4 of them were instantly sent flying, coughing up blood. In front of Ling Han, extermination was completely at a disadvantage, but facing the other 7 steps, she held an absolute advantage. When she delivered a strike, there was not a single 7 steps that could block it. To say nothing of 4. Even 10 of them would not be enough. Ha 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 ha. Extinction laughed loudly. Her long hair fluttered about, and her delicate body trembled slightly. There was a type of exceptional allure to her. The die has been cast 1 month, half a year, 1 year. Lin Luo and the others could only watch as the plane of the celestial domain rapidly disappeared. And Madness also seemed to be undergoing some kind of transformation. Gathering the power of the origin world into one body, what kind of qualitative change would occur? Ling Han still could not get up. Although Wang Chuanha was about to be completely dismembered by Mija's left and right attacks, the 7 steps possessed an incomparably strong life force. Even so, Wang Chuanha could not be allowed to die. In fact, the 7 steps could not even commit suicide. 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. The celestial domain was about to disappear, and the originally pitch-black madness actually began to change. First it turned white, then it turned silver, and finally, it developed towards gold, changing bit by bit. Most likely, when the celestial domain was completely devoured, madness would become completely golden. 9 years, 9.5 years. The core of the celestial domain was about to appear, and Wang Chuanha was finally killed by Miju. Not dying at the 7 steps depended on the situation. Back then, Empyrean Yellow Sand in Miju's previous life had been killed and destroyed by the power of the origin world's collapse. Now that Miju's power had more or less reached the same level, she naturally could do the same. Ah! Wang Chuanha let out a scream. His soul floated up, and his physical body was completely destroyed. Lin Luo and the others did not sympathize. He had brought this upon himself. Who asked him to cooperate with Miju and Madness? Asking a tiger for its skin naturally would not end well. One last attack. Miju stretched out a slender finger and jabbed at Wang Chuanha's divine soul. Relatively speaking, the divine soul of the 7 steps was far less resilient than the physical body. Pa! Under this attack, Wang Chuanha's divine soul was instantly destroyed. This time he could not be any more dead. Ah! Ling Han clutched his head. Under the effect of the blood kill technique, his divine soul also felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed by a knife, causing his head to feel as if it was about to split open. But in the next instant, he had already charged out. Target Madness, he had to stop him. There was no time. Now that Wang Chuanha was dead, Ling Han was not in the mood to think. He should feel heartache for this extreme descendant. Or perhaps he should say that he deserved it. Ling Han arrived and punched out angrily. Wang, golden light undulated on Madness's body, like ripples in water. The power of this attack was completely spread out, and evenly absorbed by Madness's incomparably huge body. The destructive power was instantly reduced by countless times, and it was unable to cause too much damage to Madness. Madness seized the time and devoured madly. Ling Han shouted again and punched out again. Peng! Miju arrived in time and met the attack with a palm, but she was immediately sent flying. But with such a reduction in power, the power of Ling Han's attack was naturally greatly reduced. Madness once again took this attack head-on. At this time, the celestial realm had completely collapsed. The plane core flew out, as if it was making a final struggle. However, the entire celestial realm was surrounded by Madness. How could this plane core possibly escape? Madness opened her mouth again, and swallowed the plane core. Spit it out! Ling Han roared as he launched a frenzied barrage of attacks. Pung pung pung. In an instant he blasted out countless punches, causing Madness's golden body to continuously tremble. Shwa, Madness counterattacked. A tentacle lashed out and hit Ling Han's fist. Wang, terrifying energy vibrated. Ling Han's figure was flipped over, and Madness's tentacle was also bounced back. In this attack, they were actually evenly matched. Hiss! After Madness devoured the last celestial realm plane, it obtained the power of the entire origin world, and was powerful to an unimaginable extent. It should be known that it was unable to use the celestial venerate symbol, and could only wield its original power. But this could still contend against Ling Han, whose power had been magnified 100,000 times. How powerful was it? The strongest in the world, fully deserving of its title. Ha 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 ha. Madness laughed loudly. Its power was still increasing, and the power of the origin world condensed endlessly. This feeling of endless power made it feel that everything was under its control. Chapter 3081. The celestial region was destroyed, the origin world was destroyed, and everything returned to Madness. All that was left was an endless void. 7 steps undying. Was he going to wander in this endless void forever? Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. Madness laughed loudly. It had waited too long for this day. From its previous life until now, after experiencing the destruction of 2 origin worlds, it had finally succeeded. What are you laughing at? Extinction flew over. I've tolerated you for too long. Madness lashed out at Extinction. It was now a origin world. With every minute that passed, it grew stronger. Before this, it had needed Extinction to hold back Ling Han. Now that it had achieved its goal, did it still need Extinction? It did not need to share its success with anyone. Bam! Of course, Extinction would not allow Madness to attack it. It tried to block, but was immediately sent flying. 10,000 miles away, she steadied herself and smiled coldly. She was not angry at all. I thought you would be more patient. At least, you wouldn't turn against me so quickly. Now that things had come to this, Ling Han was no longer anxious. The origin world had been swallowed by Madness. Now Madness was the origin world. If it entered its body, then all the rules would be decided by it. He wanted to know why Annihilation had done so many unreasonable things to help Frenzy. What was his goal? Madness was a little suspicious. Although it was big, it had been a person in the beginning. It was just that it had entered this body with its spirit and transformed into a plane. Its intelligence was not the least bit problematic. Naturally, it realized that Extinction's behavior was too abnormal. First, why was Extinction helping it? It did not ask, nor did it care. It only wanted results. Second, now that it had betrayed it, why was Extinction not shocked at all? What was she planning? This was clearly its previous body, but now Madness felt a strong sense of unfamiliarity. It felt that this previous body was too foreign. So what if I turn against you? What can you do to me? Madness waved its countless tentacles and emitted divine sense. All of this is under my control. Extinction said mildly, extremely calm. Was it faking? Madness was confused. Who would be a fool if it had the power of a level 7? It would be fine if it had tricked the other with its glib tongue. But the key was that extinction was the one who had stuck to it. There was no such fool in the world. The problem was, now that it had the power of the entire Yuan world, who could match it? No matter what you're scheming, in the face of absolute power, everything is but a lie. Frenzied lashed out at Annihilation. In just a short while, its power had increased by at least 30%. Yuan Extinguishing Strike. Extermination snorted and pointed out with a finger. Elegant and beautiful. Wang, a ray of light entered Frenzy's body, but Annihilation was also sent flying by Frenzy's attack. If it was an ordinary 7th step, this attack would have been enough to blast him into pieces. Ha ha ha, is this your backup plan? Frenzied laughed. In the face of absolute power, everything else is useless. Shui whipped out another attack. Annihilation dodged and did not take it head-on. When the origin world was destroyed in the previous generation, countless souls and wills fused together. Among them, there was even the will of the origin world itself. Annihilation said as if he was spreading knowledge to madness. However, Ling Han, Lin Luotian, Chong Yen, and the others were listening carefully. Annihilation might reveal a huge secret. The origin world itself has a will, but it's extremely weak. It only contains the information that it breeds life, Annihilation said. Of course, if there's life, there must be death. And I received such information. Annihilation pointed at herself and smiled, her beauty stunning. Unfortunately, the origin world in the previous generation was destroyed, and most of the information was destroyed. I only have a small part of it. She looked at Frenzied and continued. Coincidentally, the part that I got is the death code. Frenzied's expression changed. This was reflected on its huge body, and the color of its body's surface changed drastically. As strong as Annihilation was, it would never speak without thinking. Also, Annihilation said, you really shouldn't have transformed into a plane. You learned from the previous life's lesson. After transforming into a plane, even if the origin world collapses, such an attack can't kill you. However, the operation of the origin world has its own rules. There's both a life code and a death code. This is aimed at planes. Frenzied's tentacles danced again, showing the fluctuations of its emotions. Annihilation looked at Ling Han and said, I said that a new era is coming. Why don't you believe me? Ling Han was cold. This Annihilation seemed to have calculated everyone. Previously, it had used Wang Chuanha to plot against him, and it had long since dug a trap for Frenzied. Who exactly are you? Annihilation smiled faintly. There's no rush. It's not time to reveal the mystery yet. She looked at Frenzied. This is the last plane of the origin world. When it is destroyed, the door to a new world will be opened, and we will walk out of this small puddle. Chong Yen and the others were excited. They had joined forces with Annihilation because of this. Besides, when Frenzied died, they would also receive great benefits, and it was possible for them to advance to the 8th step. Nonsense. Bullshit. Frenzied roared. His divine sense rippled and surged, causing waves to form in his sea of consciousness. It waved its tentacles and attacked Annihilation. I'll kill you first. Annihilation dodged. Although her strength could not compare to Frenzied's, she was still one of the strongest 7 steps. She could dodge at least 90% of Frenzied's attacks, and when she could not dodge the occasional attack, she could completely neutralize it. Frenzied, you have transformed into a plane, so you must abide by the laws of the plane. Even if you devour all the planes now, it's useless. There is no such thing as an indestructible plane. Frenzied was still attacking, but very quickly, its body became unstable. Rays of light surged in its body, as if they were about to burst out. Could it be that, as Annihilation said, Frenzied was really going to be destroyed? This was really unbelievable. After devouring the entire origin world, Frenzied should have reached the peak of its life, but at this time, it was showing signs of declining. 1, 2, 3, 4. Annihilation was still counting. When she counted to 59, Frenzied finally had no more strength to attack. Endless light flashed in its body, and its golden body trembled violently. No, I am the greatest existence in the world. I have devoured the entire world. and I will rush out of this world." Frenzied roared, and its divine sense swept through the void. Lin Luo and the others saw this, and they were filled with shock. Was annihilation going to clear her name? Frenzied's aura became more and more unstable. Its body was expanding, as if it had been blown too much air, and it could explode at any time. End of this chapter. Chapter 3083. Frenzy had self-destructed. A bright light shone, blinding to the eyes. Even an elite like Ling Han could not help but close his eyes to avoid being blinded. But in the next instant he immediately moved. He flew towards Lin Luo and the others, directly capturing them and placing them under his protection. Boom! Behind him, a terrifying power surged towards him like a raging wave beating against the shore, directly sending him flying. Ling Han resisted with all his might. The power of thousands of planes interweaved into a net, resisting the frightening shock wave behind him. Frenzy's self-destruction formed a destructive shock wave. Now the entire origin world was gathered on Frenzy's body. Its self-destruction was equivalent to the great collapse of the origin world. Moreover, this was a big explosion formed by the compression of the entire origin world into a plane. Naturally, it was even more terrifying. Without a doubt, such an attack was something that even Ling Han could not resist. He could only go with the flow and be pushed out by this force. If he fought it head-on, even if he did not die, he would probably be heavily injured, and the plane in his body would at least be destroyed. Rumble! Only a loud sound was left in the empty space. The energy shock wave surged past, and even the void storm was completely annihilated. This was no longer a question of how far he was sent flying, but rather how long Ling Han had been pushed by the energy storm at such a high speed. A whole 100 million years. Who would have thought that the big explosion formed by Frenzy's self-destruction would actually last for 100 million years? Only then did the energy storm slow down. Ling Han stood still. He let go of Lin Luo and the others, letting them down. "Go back," Ling Han said. He lifted his foot, and a huge pair of wings spread out behind him. This was formed by the combination of intrinsic power and plane power. With a flap, his speed increased infinitely, and he flew towards the center of Frenzy's self-destruction. Lin Luo and the others followed closely behind. Although there was a huge difference in battle prowess between 7 steps, their speed was about the same. Ling Han was slightly faster, but not by much. Another 100 million years later, Ling Han and the others returned to their original place. After such a wild explosion, even the energy storm in the void had calmed down. However, the void was too vast. Not long after, the energy storm in the endless distance would slowly spread over and restore everything. Perhaps after a few years, a new origin world would appear here. The end of life was death, but death was not the end, it was just a new beginning. In the place where Frenzy had been, there was now a blurry door. Through the door, one could see a blurry world, but it was unclear what was inside. Is this what it means to jump out of a puddle? Above the door, there was a golden sphere that spun around. From time to time, it would release a ray of light that illuminated the starry sky. Xiao Annihilation, Chong Yen, and the others also flew back. When they saw that door and the golden sphere above it, they could not help but reveal expressions of excitement. Is this what they wanted all along? Xiao, another person flew over from another direction. Ling Han turned his head to look, and he couldn't help but be astonished. It wasn't a human, but an octopus. Its body was around 3 zhang long, and it had 8 tentacles hanging down from its body. Its entire body was golden. Frenzy, this was indeed a much smaller version of Frenzy. Could it still be alive? Annihilation, Annihilation. The octopus stared at Annihilation, its 8 tentacles waving. It seemed incomparably furious. Annihilation glanced at it and said, "So you still had a trick up your sleeve. You hid your true core in your enormous body. Now that your body has collapsed, the evolution of your true core has saved your life." After suffering in the previous origin world, I'm not that smart anymore. Frenzy said coldly. It's good that you're not dead. I'll feel a great sense of accomplishment if I destroy you with my own hands, Annihilation said. He suddenly reached out and grabbed, aiming for the golden sphere above the door of light. In your dreams. Ling Han moved, his figure crashing over and punching out. Annihilation had gone through so much trouble. Her goal should be this sphere. He definitely could not let her succeed. Shwa. Frenzy also moved, waving its tentacles as it charged over. Pung pung pung. The three great elites engaged in a fierce battle. Frenzy's strength was definitely the strongest before it had been destroyed, but its existential body had been destroyed. Although its true core had not been destroyed, and a new body had been formed, its strength had been reduced by 1,000,000 times. Now in terms of primal strength, it was even weaker than Annihilation. But on the other hand, it was no longer a plane. What did this mean? It could use the celestial venerable mark. Wang, only one mark lit up on its body, but it increased its strength by countless times. When it waved its tentacles, it actually still had 1/10 of its full strength. Like Ling Han, it had also mastered all the celestial venerable marks. One could imagine how long it had lived, and what kind of existence it was. How difficult could it be to derive all the celestial venerable marks? However, on the battlefield, Ling Han still had the advantage. His strength was the strongest, and when he punched out, neither Frenzy nor Annihilation was a match for his punch. Pung pung. The two elites were continuously sent flying by him. Now there was no one who could keep Ling Han in check. He was definitely the world's #1 elite. Could it be that Annihilation's plan for so long was all for naught? Annihilation let out a long howl and charged towards the golden sphere. You're thinking too much. Ling Han sneered. With a big stride, he chased after Annihilation and punched out. Pung. Annihilation was actually smashed into pieces by a single punch. Ling Han was shocked. Although his punch was domineering, it should not have this kind of power. After all, it was Annihilation. Indeed, in the next instant, Annihilation's shattered body continued to charge towards the door of light. Then, with the golden sphere as the center, the shattered body immediately reformed. Haha, the secret of the world is mine. She laughed loudly, her black hair fluttering in the wind. Annihilation! Chong Yan and the others all shouted, appearing extremely furious. Previously, they had agreed that they would also have a part in this. It was the key to whether or not they could advance to the 8th step. Do you think that just because I made a Tao oath, I will definitely abide by it? Annihilation laughed loudly, appearing extremely proud. A bunch of idiots. If I achieve the 8th step, I will jump out of this world. How can that so-called Tao oath bind me? This fellow was really sinister, tricking people everywhere. Ling Han rushed over. If the Tao oath can't bind you, then let me beat you up. He punched out, blasting at Annihilation. The two of them fought, but after Annihilation devoured the golden sphere, her strength actually increased in a straight line. In the void, endless energy rolled over and surged into Annihilation's body. Ha ha ha. Once I absorb the power of the entire void, I will be able to break through that door of the void and enter that new world. Annihilation laughed loudly, extremely proud of herself. Everything was just as she had expected. Chapter 3084. A good story. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that although most of the energy had surged into Annihilation's body, he had also absorbed quite a bit of it. The 6th type of essential power was growing in his body. As this power grew stronger, the speed at which he extracted the energy also increased. The many planes in his body seemed to have been activated as well. They greedily absorbed the essential power and advanced towards a higher level. Life Code. Ling Han suddenly understood. Frenzy had devoured the entire origin world. Of course, it had also condensed the life code, which contained the core secrets of the origin world. No wonder Frenzy had become so strong just now. But because of Annihilation's trap, its body had exploded, and even the core of the life code had been exposed. Now that Annihilation had obtained the life code, it was complete. Naturally, her power had skyrocketed. Why hadn't he encountered such a situation? Ling Han thought about it and understood. Previously he had only been at the 6th step. He had been limited by his realm, so his progress had not been fast. This so-called slow speed was actually extremely fast. In just 10 billion years, he had advanced all the planes to a higher level. Now that he had advanced to the 7th step, He had unlocked the upper limit of his realm. Naturally, the speed at which he extracted essential power had increased greatly. Moreover, as his cultivation of the seventh step became stronger and more stable, the speed at which he extracted essential power would increase. Also, the existence of the origin world had previously acted as a sort of balance and restriction. This had definitely suppressed Ling Han's speed. Now it was different. There was no longer the existence of the origin world in the void. The surging power surged towards Ling Han and annihilation. "That's mine!" Frenzy roared and charged over. At that time, it had also peeped into a trace of the life code. Otherwise, its power would not have been so strong. When the surging energy surged over, it had also obtained a portion. That golden sphere was not just a simple password. It also had the effect of condensing essential power. Otherwise, even if one had grasped the life code, it would not have been able to absorb it so quickly. Ling Han and the other two fought as they fought to absorb the energy. Chong Yan and the others also wanted a share of the loot. However, they were too weak and could be sent flying with a casual punch or palm. Even if they were strong enough, without grasping the life code, how could they absorb such energy? They could only watch the show. However, this was related to whether or not they could advance to the 8th step. Right now, a huge opportunity had appeared in front of them, but they could only stare at it. This caused their eyes to almost split open, and they were extremely anxious. Lin Luo and the others didn't think that way. They all frowned. Who would be the one laughing in the end? If it wasn't for Ling Han, everything would have been as bad as it could get. Boom! Void energy surged toward him. The void did not have a consciousness, and only acted according to some kind of law. From the perspective of the void, if a Yuan world was destroyed, then the next step would be to create a new one. Thus, endless energy was transferred over to create a new world. At the center was the golden sphere, which was the password to the origin world. This energy was so powerful that it was more than enough for Ling Han, Frenzy, and Annihilation to share. In fact, it was so much that they were about to explode from the pressure. Destroying a world was a mighty power, but so was creating a world. The three of them had no choice but to stop and do their best to refine that terrifying energy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to endure it, and their bodies would explode. The three of them sat down and absorbed the endless energy, turning it into their own strength. In Ling Han's body, the sixth essential power quickly reached a state of saturation. He had advanced to the peak of the 7th step. This speed was unbelievably fast, but the current situation was too special. How many opportunities did the origin world have to destroy and create? After reaching the peak of the 7th step, the 6 essential powers reached a perfect balance. Once they operated, they formed a terrifying absorption force. Within Ling Han's body, all of the dimensions were growing vigorously and healthily. If he had obtained the golden sphere, perhaps as long as one or a few planes reached the super high grade, the void would stop the infusion of power. Because there were too many planes in his body, he could evolve them into a new origin world with just a slight increase. But now, the golden sphere was in Annihilation's body, and the number of planes she had was limited. Although she had obtained the life code and could evolve planes, the speed would definitely be very slow. Therefore, when all the planes in her body reached the super high grade, she had no choice but to stop extracting energy. She had to evolve a new plane first, and then strengthen it. In this way, how could she compete with Ling Han in terms of speed? There was no need to talk about frenzy. There were no planes in its body, maybe one or two. Very soon, it reached a state of saturation, and had no choice but to retreat. Otherwise it would explode. It waved its 8 claws, full of jealousy and anger. It had devoured the origin world and created this great creation. But it was expelled so quickly that it could not bear it. It whipped at Ling Han and Annihilation, but the endless energy surged and turned into a solid substance. Frenzy's attack did not hit anyone, and was directly bounced back by the energy. Frenzy whipped a few more times to vent its anger, but there was nothing it could do. It could only give up and turn its gaze to the light door. Outside was a new world. If it went out and jumped out of this small puddle, then as long as it obtained some opportunity, it would be far more than this little benefit. Moreover, after it went out, it would blow up this light door. You guys stay in this small puddle until you rot. It rushed over, wanting to squeeze into the light door. However, it immediately realized that it could not squeeze into the light door no matter how hard it tried. It seemed to be extremely tough. No matter how it squeezed, it could only squeeze in by an inch at most. It could not get out at all. It shrunk to about an inch in size and squeezed into the light door again. However, its size had shrunk, and the amount of space it could squeeze in was also reduced. It still could not get out. It let out an angry roar. It was fine if it could not obtain that great opportunity, but now it could not even get out. It could not get out. Annihilation. Frenzy attacked the light door. It was not naive enough to think that Ling Han, or Annihilation, would be so kind as to bring it out when the time came. Therefore, since it was going to be trapped here and rot here, then everyone would do it together. It attacked wildly, but this light door was surprisingly sturdy. No, it could not be said to be sturdy. It was more like it could not withstand any force at all. Frenzy attacked continuously for several days, but there was no effect at all. It tried to drill in again, but found that even the toughness had disappeared. It seemed to be just a projection, and did not exist at all. How could something that did not exist be destroyed and penetrated? Frenzy went crazy. It stared at Lin Luo, Chong Yan and the others. Since that was the case, then it would kill all of them. Chapter 3085. Ling Han desperately extracted energy. Within his body, new planes were born one after another, and the old planes were constantly getting stronger, advancing toward a super high level. After an unknown amount of time, his body trembled, and there was a surge of power in his body. There was a plane that had reached an extremely high level. Then a second plane reached a super high level. Then one after another, new planes reached a super high level. Time was still flying, and the number of planes he owned had increased from more than 400,000 to more than 1 million, and more than half of them had reached a super high level. More planes were still evolving, and there were even more planes that were advancing to the super grade. Ling Han really didn't dare to imagine what kind of level his current power had reached. A super high-level plane was equivalent to at least 10 peak 7-step cultivators. Now the super high-level planes in his body were advancing toward 1 million. How terrifying was this power? It far surpassed the previous origin world. Ling Han was surprised. He realized that the amount of energy he was extracting was decreasing. It wasn't that he couldn't defeat Annihilation, which allowed him to extract more energy. It was that the supply of energy was decreasing. So naturally, the amount of energy he could extract was decreasing. Ling Han thought about it and suddenly understood. He and Annihilation had joined forces to drain the void. The void was infinite. How could they drain it? Of course, although they had never reached the edge of the void, since it was called a puddle, there had to be an end. It was just that it was too big for Ling Han and the others, so they had never reached it. Now how much energy had Ling Han and Annihilation absorbed? They had made 1 million planes reach a super high level. This was too terrifying. Annihilation couldn't compare to Ling Han. But no matter how little, he must have absorbed at least 100,000. They had forcefully drained the void. Soon the last trace of energy disappeared. The entire void had become a space of nothingness. There wasn't even any energy left. What? In the distance, Frenzy, Lin Luo, Chong Yan, and the others, who were fighting fiercely, couldn't help but stop. They could no longer draw essence power from the void to replenish their energy. They couldn't even sense essence particles. How could they not be shocked? Once the energy in their bodies was used up, they would slowly wither and fall from step 7 to become ordinary. This shocked and terrified them. Ha 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 ha. Annihilation laughed heartily. Her beautiful hair fluttered in the wind, and more than 100,000 supreme planes appeared within her body. Her strength was hundreds of millions of times greater than before. After plotting for so long, she had finally achieved her wish. Exterminate, exterminate. Frenzy gritted its teeth. This previous incarnation had conspired to steal all of its opportunities, causing it to hate it to the core. Humph, who the hell do you think you are? Mia Absolute slashed out with his palm in a frenzy. He frantically waved his tentacles to meet the attack, but one of his tentacles was immediately chopped off. Golden blood splattered everywhere, causing some energy fluctuations to appear in this desolate world. You can't even withstand a single blow, Miju said coldly. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The frenzy that was invincible in the past was now so weak. Mia Extermination looked at Chong Yen and the other 5 Supremes, and a strange smile appeared on his face. I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but there's no helping it. You haven't grasped the life code, so how could you possibly advance to the 8th step? However, I can still bring you out of this place and into a new world. Perhaps, this new world is infinitely vast, and the opportunities here are nothing compared to it. Hearing her say this, although Chong Yen and the other 4 were extremely displeased, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. Since there was no hope of advancing to the 8th step, there was only one hope left, and that was to leave this place. They had already tried before, but they had been unable to pass through that door of light, because it didn't exist at all. As long as they left this place and entered a wider world, perhaps they would be able to advance to the 8th step easily. Endure. Chong Yen and the others flew towards Mia Extermination, looking forward to a beautiful future. Ling Han didn't stop them. There was no rush. Although Mia Extermination was countless times stronger, so was he. He would only become stronger. Everything was under control. Chong Yen and the other 4, as well as Golden Silkworm and Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows, all flew over. They were looking forward to a beautiful future. Mia Extermination revealed a strange smile and said, very much looking forward to what kind of world it is outside this puddle. Chong Yen and the other 4 revealed looks of longing. They had already reached the end of their realm, unable to advance any further. The only way for them to advance further was to jump out of this world. Everyone was curious, especially almighties like them. They wanted to know what kind of world it was outside this world. And this riddle was about to be solved. Puffed. Blood splattered. Something unexpected happened. They saw Mia Extermination suddenly attack, stabbing Chong Yan's back and directly piercing through his chest. Between his slender fingers, there was a still-beating heart. Ha! Chong Yan screamed. So what if he had a 7-step body? His once indestructible body couldn't resist Mia Extermination at all. Mia Extermination retracted her hand, and Chong Yan immediately fell, his face pale. Undying at 7 steps meant that one could still live without a heart. But it was precisely because of the undying at 7 steps that every part of one's body became incomparably precious. Who knew how long it would take to regenerate a heart after it was removed? But why did Mia Extermination suddenly attack? She had no use for these people anymore, so she had to start clearing them out. Poyu, Golden Silkworm, and the others hurriedly retreated, looking at Mia Extermination in horror. The 7 steps that had once dominated everything were no longer high and mighty. In front of Ling Han and Mia Extermination, they were incomparably weak. And Madness, once the number 1 vicious creature, could only retreat to the 2nd line. Previously, Madness had wanted to kill Chong Yen, Lin Luo, and the others, but it could only suppress them and not kill them. With this comparison, it was clear that Mia Extermination and Ling Han's power had left it far behind. Why? Chong Yen roared angrily. Losing his heart was a huge blow to him. Who knew how many billions of years it would take to recover? Moreover, there was no origin world now, and there was no more energy in the void. How could he recover? Mia Extermination revealed a cruel smile. She attacked, and the sound of bones breaking rang out continuously. Poyu Big Dipper. And the other 7 steps were also trampled. All of them had their hands and feet broken, and their hearts and lungs dug out. Was this a form of torture? Lin Luo and the others shook their heads. No matter how they looked at it, it looked like she was taking revenge for a personal grudge. Mia Extermination wasn't really Mia Extermination. She was just borrowing this body. Who exactly was she? Did she have a deep grudge against Chong Yen and the others? Haven't you always wanted to know who I am? Mia Extermination sneered. End of this chapter. Chapter 3087. Ling Han had actually intervened to stop Miju's murder. If Miju had wanted to kill Lin Luo and the others, then it was not strange that Ling Han had intervened. But why had he saved Po Yu and the others? The scene was truly chaotic and unimaginable. You dare stop me? Miju said coldly, her eyes flashing with flames. Ling Han smiled faintly. I'm going to kill these four myself. I'm already very unhappy that you killed one before. And you want to do it again? Miju was furious, her black hair standing on end. She had buried her hatred for Chong Yen and the others for 3,000 eras. What kind of hatred was that? Now that her cultivation had reached the peak, and she had tricked Chong Yen and the others, the most important part was naturally to kill them one by one and reap the perfect revenge. But she had only killed one Chong Yen before she was stopped. Her heart was filled with displeasure and anger. In that case, I'll kill you first. Miju shouted and charged at Ling Han. Ling Han attacked, and Miju clashed with him. Bang bang bang. An intense battle began again. The two's strength had reached a level that even a peak 7th-step cultivator could only look up to. A single wave of energy could send a 7th-step cultivator flying, and even make him vomit blood. Even Frenzy could not withstand it, and had to retreat under the surging energy. But it was too strong, and energy waves alone could not hurt it. You've become so strong. Miju was shocked. She had thought that after absorbing all the energy in the void, she could crush any existence. She had not expected that Ling Han would not be weaker than her. How was that possible? It had to be known that she had only been able to absorb such a huge amount of energy after obtaining the golden sphere, which was the complete life code. But what about Ling Han? The life code he had obtained was not complete, so how could he compare to her? Miju could not accept this. Ling Han's current strength was completely unreasonable. Surprised, right? Ling Han said faintly. There's something even more surprising than you. He had only used 1/10 of his strength, and that was already enough to fight against Miju. Thus, if he went all out, suppressing Miju would be a piece of cake. Miju gritted his teeth and yelled, "Hateful brat, how dare you steal my opportunity?" What Frenzy didn't know was that if he wanted to break through this puddle, he would need to obtain the energy of the entire void. Only then would he be able to blast open the barrier that transcended the plane level and enter that mysterious and unknown new world. Annihilation knew because she had witnessed the destruction of the origin world twice, and had even obtained the consciousness of the origin world. But now, she speculated that half of the power had been obtained by Ling Han, which meant that she could not open that door and enter the new world. How could I do that? This world, including space itself, had been sucked dry, and it was impossible to form a new Yuan world. All that was left was endless loneliness. Who could endure living in such a world for countless eras? Just thinking about it would drive people crazy. No, there's still hope. Annihilation stared at Ling Han. As long as I kill you and obtain your energy, I can still open that door and enter the new world. Stop dreaming. Frenzy laughed coldly. That doesn't exist. Otherwise, I would have left long ago. He was now far from being a match for his previous incarnation. But if he had the chance, he didn't mind attacking this rival of his from his previous life. Annihilation sneered. Idiot. What you see isn't the real door at all. It's a coordinate, a weak point in space. As long as you absorb the power of the void and bombard that point, the real door will open. Oh, so that's how it is. Frenzy, Po Yu, and the others suddenly understood. No wonder they couldn't rush out. It turned out that they were too weak, and didn't have the qualifications to open that door. It was no wonder that this door didn't seem to exist. It was untouchable and unreachable. Indeed, it was only a guide and not a real existence. Annihilation let out a long howl, and used all kinds of techniques to attack Ling Han. However, Ling Han ignored her. Instead, his eyes were fixed on Pu and the others. You old bastards, I told you to work hard on the front lines. Not only did you not listen, but you hooked up with this dead transvestite, who's neither a man nor a woman. You even colluded with Frenzy, and caused the destruction of the Yuan world. Let me ask you, do you regret it? His hand moved like a bolt of lightning, and he'd already grabbed Mountain Breaker in his hand. When Ling Han had just reached the 6th step, Po Yu had already been no match for him. Now, not only had Ling Han reached the 7th step, but he had also absorbed about 90% of the void's energy. There were millions of super high-grade planes in his body. What kind of concept was that? Even 100 million seven-step cultivators might not be able to stop him, let alone a seven-step cultivator. Poyu was shocked, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Put him down. Annihilation roared, her tone harsh. She hated Poyu and the others to death, and it was precisely because of this that she had to kill them with her own hands. Otherwise, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? After so many years, the only thing that had kept her from going crazy was the motivation for revenge. Now that she was at the peak, just as she was about to taste the wine of revenge, this wine had suddenly been snatched away. How could she not be angry? She was like a crazed demon as she attacked Ling Han with all her might. Lin Luo and the others all had complicated expressions on their faces. A grand seven-step supremacy had now become a toy that was being fought over by others. It wasn't that Ling Han and Annihilation wanted the power of a seven-step supremacy, but that they wanted to kill him with their own hands. Even though they were standing on the opposite side, Lin Luo and the others still felt incomparably emotional. They were also at the seventh step, so it was inevitable that they would have some strange emotions. As for the Big Dipper, Half Moon, and Black Feather Celestial, they all felt sympathy for the death of a rabbit. They had been targeted by Ling Han and Annihilation, and either one of them could easily crush them to death. How could they not feel sad? Once Poyu died, it would be their turn. Ling Han didn't care at all, casually blocking Annihilation's incomparably terrifying attacks with one hand, while his other hand gripped Poyu's neck. His 5 fingers exerted force, causing Poyu's neck bones to emit crackling sounds. What seven-step undying body? In front of the current Ling Han, it was so weak that it couldn't even withstand a single blow. Old thief, do you regret it? Ling Han asked. Regret it? Poyu said in a hoarse voice. He really regretted collaborating with Annihilation and cutting off his own path of survival. He didn't even know that he had been sold. Unfortunately, they had to deal with a monster like Ling Han. Otherwise, with Ling Han's help against extermination, they might even have a chance of winning. As long as Ling Han won, he would be able to open that door and bring them to a new world. What a beautiful ending that would be. But now, it was too late for regrets. It's good that you regret it. Ling Han nodded. He clenched his fist, and with a paw, Mountain Breaker transformed into a rain of blood. His eyes were cold as he stared at Big Dipper, Xian Yu and Half Moon. 8. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.